The Mind of Mansion show is here now, and RC Fischer is here with us right now. RC Fischer, the most decorated guest in the history of this show, award winning take artist. RC Fischer here with us today. Give us some thoughts, RC, on just the state of the NFL and fantasy football and how you feel today.
It is, first of all, thank you for having me on. Great to be back. Amazing intro. I've set my calendar for the day. I've got it completely open till midnight so that we can talk about everything that needs to be talked about. So we'll see if we set a record for length of podcast for this one. But
Oh no, RC in the chat. They've already started at you, man. Nick Take Jake has already started at you. He wants a Will Levis update from you.
make sure that I
You
do that.
famously loved Will Levis. They want an update. They're already trolling you, RC. We're a minute in.
We'll start with Will Levis. Can we
I
start with
guess
Will
we're
Levis?
just gonna no more pleasantries. I was gonna ask questions about FF metrics. We were gonna do a proper, Bulls intro. I think we're still gonna do that. But the chat has spoken, and we love to record these live so the chat can be part of the
Yeah.
show. And they want to troll you. That they're not here for all the wins. They're not here for you calling Marvin Harrison and Caleb Williams overrated. No. You were as right as anybody last year about the 2024 draft class. No, they want to go a year prior. They want to rewind the tape another year and talk about the one quarterback you really liked that has not fired.
Thank you for the proper welcome from the chat to the show. That the opening moments that the Will Levis bomb is put out there, which is cool, because it's legit. Last year, I was into Will Levis, and I still think he's a talent. I'm not giving up on him being a talent per se. For fantasy, I'm not going all in. I'm not thinking he's going to be the starter on purpose for the Titans. But as far as a talent goes, I'm fine with Will Levis. I thought last year what brought him down more than anything was probably the worst offensive line, especially pass blocking, that we've seen in the NFL in I don't know how many years. So you have that foundation to start, and then it just went bad from there. But I'm still a fan. Like with when Baker Mayfield went sideways, when everybody
Mm-hmm.
gave up on Baker Mayfield,
Mm-hmm.
and he bounced around the league, and they were about to give up on him. I think Levis will have another second act. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But I still like the talent. I won't back away from. I think that Will Levis is a legit starting quarterback, a talented one, should be starting in the NFL. But I get that the whole public momentum has gone away from him like it did with Baker Mayfield. So we'll see if he has a second act coming up. He may still be the starting quarterback for Tennessee by the time this is all said and done. I know a lot of teams are trying to acquire him on the cheap, which I would love it if he went to like the Rams and worked with McVay like Baker did, and then had his second act after. I mean, he's the perfect after Matt Stafford is done. Will Levis is the perfect replacement for Matt Stafford in LA. If that
Yeah, he's like a
happens, I'm
less
gonna be
refined. He's a less refined, less pocket aware version of Matthew Stafford.
and and I think on the pocket side of Will Levis, the difference between him, and we're talking NFL terms, the difference between him and like Caleb Williams and Shedeur Sanders, let's drag them all into a discussion. Will Levis has an X factor that I look for when I'm scouting a quarterback, in that he will drop back into a pocket properly, assess what's going on down the field, and he does not blink, he does not freeze, he does not anything. he is going to stay in that pocket and either make throws or get hit. And he got hit a lot in Tennessee last year because that, especially from the right-hand side, because I mean, their right-hand side of the offensive line was an olay of just letting people through. And Levis never got the yips. Levis never um, buckled and was scrambling out of the pocket too much. He stays in there and takes his hits. He's not afraid by what's going on around him. Where Kaleb Williams, and why I was against him last year, and what you saw play out in the NFL right in front of your own eyes, not your own eyes, our own eyes, was as soon as it got muddy, he froze. And when he froze, he might try to escape, but he usually just froze in the pocket and stood there, and then he would ultimately get hit. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to be have the same issue. So I still, if I was an NFL GM, I'd be ringing Tennessee's phone off the hook to get my hands on Will Levis. But was it a crappy take last year for the way that it played out? Sure.
No, don't say that. No, you had it. RC, you were just, no, stop it.
Edit that out.
No, you don't have to say that. You don't owe anyone an apology. You don't have to admit anything was cold last year. You were hot last year. You don't need to do this. You don't need to pander to these people. You're not a sock puppet for the chat. Just because someone asks you to take an L doesn't mean you have to take an L. You're not taking any L's. Like, anyone that took the L on Baker Mayfield's looking pretty dumb. Anyone that took the L on Kirk Cousins in Washington, or Jared Goff in Los Angeles, or Sam Darnold in New York, or Geno Smith in New York, all these places where quarterbacks flamed out and were considered busts. And then 5 years later, after working with a Sean McVay or a Kevin O'Connell or a genius offensive coordinator X, suddenly they're back and they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. Even Jameis Winston will be heard from again.
I think so. Very
Jameis Winston in New York would be absolutely perfect. That is the path for Malik Nabers to be this year's Jamar Chase. Nabers is Chase if he has Jameis Winston. Because it's Winston to Nabers. It's Nabers from Winston all year. That's what we want, right? And that's what's going to happen. Okay.
And I hated Jameis Winston coming out of college, and he played out about the way that I thought he was going to. But just like all the quarterbacks you mentioned, the Geno Smiths, the Sam Darnold last year, these quarterbacks that prove that they can grind and learn, and they get with Sean Payton or wherever they get that they get that whatever it is that they need, the experience, what have you. I saw in the last 2 years, but especially last year, Jameis Winston is good. He's a legit starting quarterback in the NFL now. I would have never thought that 5 years ago, but the world is changing on those types of guys. And a lot of it has to do with where you landed and who you're working with and what the offensive line is. So I agree with your take. Wherever Jameis Winston lands, whether that's Pittsburgh, which is what I think is going to be, or the Giants, or he goes back to Cleveland, I think he's going to be some level of a success, and he's going to be good for whatever wide receivers you're aching for to be good because they got a legit quarterback.
Right. If Will Levis grew his hair out, went to Clemson, would have been the first pick overall, the team would have stuck by him in spite of having the worst offensive line in the sport. He would have been able to get another, couple $100 million contract, and we'd be in the same situation. There's not that much of a difference. We didn't see much of a difference. There wasn't much daylight between Trevor Lawrence and Will Levis last year. But one guy is the anointed one and is going to get chance after chance, opportunity after opportunity. And the other guy was a second-round pick. And if it doesn't happen, bye-bye. Just a vaudevillian cane off the stage. And those are the perfect players to acquire. If you're looking for a backup quarterback with upside that can run the offense with upside, that's who you want. You want a Will Levis. Why would you go and get a Marcus Mariota? It doesn't make any sense. I would much rather have. It's the same reason why I was frustrated as a Patriots fan with the Josh Dobbs signing. I'm like, Milton has upside, right? You have a gift in Milton. Why are you squandering it? Now you're gonna have to trade him. But no, actually, it makes sense. It makes sense that, hey, they're fully committed to Drake May, and it's not about Milton in New England. And if he could very well break out somewhere else, and that's fine. And hopefully they can get a reasonably valued draft pick for him. Great. But many of these quarterbacks we've seen back through time, including a former Titan quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill had the worst offensive line play in Miami, if we remember. And he was a flaming bust. And they resurrected him in Tennessee with an above-average offensive line. That's what happened. He is offensive line and supporting cast dependent. There's a lot of quarterbacks out here, like Jared Goff and many others, that are supporting cast dependent, where you put them on a team where they're getting blitzed and they're getting constantly pressured and they don't have great wide receiver play. They're not going to be able to carry that team. A lot of quarterbacks are in that situation. But if you surround them with, protect them, give them Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, then all of a sudden they can use those natural gifts, the arm talent, and succeed. But most quarterbacks are flawed. Will Levis is flawed, and he's not going to be able to elevate a bad team. But he could absolutely be a quality starting quarterback at the helm of a team that has the pieces in place on offense.
And you saw the reverse of that, talking about offensive line dependent. I love the talent of CJ Stroud, but for output purposes last year, he stunk. He had a bad fantasy year last year, and he's a talented quarterback, but that offensive line had him under constant pressure. Then he started losing his white, lost Diggs, then he lost Dell. So your surroundings have a lot to do with your success. Not everybody's Joe Burrow. I mean, there's only a handful, not even, hardly a handful of Brady's and Burrows that it doesn't matter what you throw at them, they're going to be a success. Even Mahomes in the Super Bowl got a dose of what happens when you don't have protection and very good wide receivers.
Yeah, Mahomes was like, this is what Will Levis was dealing with every week. Right? This is tough. This is tough stuff. So this is my favorite time to just swoop in. I was never a Will Levis fan because his college numbers were just not good enough. He was not efficient enough in college for me to get excited about him, and I was terrified that he was going to be an interception machine in the NFL. No reason. Really, you didn't really need to get out over your skis on Will Levis. You could just take him if he was there late. But in Superflex, especially in Dynasty, I don't like guys like Will Levis. They're too risky. I'd much prefer the game manager that gets elevated by his supporting cast. That's much more my targeted profile in Superflex and 2QB leagues for Dynasty. So Will Levis, a guy that was interesting in single quarterback leagues more than Superflex for me, just because if things did hit just right. But when he got drafted by Tennessee, everybody knew this was a bad landing spot. No one was like, oh, Levis to Tennessee, this is a winner. He locked out. Oh, man, the guy just, he rolled a 7. Look at this.
I hated it with Vrabel. I got on board with it because of Callahan. I thought was going to open up that offense and everything, and he's going to bring his dad in to fix the offensive line. And little did I know that Callahan is pronounced differently. It's pronounced Nathaniel Hackett in other languages. So Tennessee is maybe, I mean, they didn't get to the number 1 draft pick last year because they're well coached and have a great game plan. So I I won't say I bet heavy on it and got burned because Levis didn't cost much. Levis was way deep in the weeds. Dynasty value had almost no value and was a deep sleeper in Dynasty and fantasy, so it didn't sting, but I certainly thought he was going to do a lot better. And I lost personally. I bet on the Titans win totals over under. I thought that they were going to
Can you stop it?
o-
You don't need to talk about this. Stop. You don't. Why are you talking about this? Don't talk about it. This is why you're the best, because you just volunteer information that doesn't help you for no reason. For absolutely no reason. You are so genuinely honest, and the audience feels it. It's palpable. Like, you come on this show in such good faith, and year after year, when we're doing the Player Profiler Awards, the audience rewards you with Take of the Year, Guest of the Year, the hardware. Also, because we go for like 3 hours. This is an uncapped show. My wife, I told her, don't come up here. Don't look for me this afternoon. I don't know if I'm going to eat lunch today. I'm on with RC Fischer, and there's no limit. I mean, there's very few fantasy football podcasts that are going to go over 2 hours in March. Most people are like, what the hell could you possibly be talking about? And I was like, the better question is, what are we not talking about? What am I not going to talk about with RC? That's the real question. We have so much to talk about. My God, the show sheet. We have so much. We're not going to get to it all. And then we have the chat. We can always go to the chat and say, hey, chat, why? What do you want to talk about now? And the idea that you wouldn't just run the clock out on Will Levis, of course an analyst who liked Will Levis, whether it's Cody Carpentier, whether it's RC Fischer, they're going to run the clock out. We've seen way too many quarterbacks with talent, like arm talent, that was drafted the same spot with similar arm talent to Derek Carr, right? That's my comp for Will Levis. He reminds me of a Derek Carr, but Derek Carr's had the aggressiveness beaten out of him by the league. And that's what happens to a lot of these guys. They get the aggressiveness completely beaten out of them. Levis hasn't had the aggressiveness beaten out of him yet. Jameis Winston doesn't have the aggressiveness beaten out of him yet. It could take 2, 3, 4 years, and you look up, and there's Will Levis landing on a team, somehow injected into the starting lineup in week 10, and he's making a run, and everyone's wondering where he's going to sign the next year. I mean, tell me that's not likely. That's actually likely. That the story I just laid out is more likely than not.
Baker Mayfield is the forerunner for all of this because they tried to beat him. They tried to beat his swashbuckling ways out of him, banished him. Cleveland bet the entire franchise, gave the most ridiculous contract in the history of football to Deshaun Watson that made the fans go crazy about how in love they were with their Browns move. Then they just banished Baker to the Carolina Panthers, who then benched him, and he was just roaming around available, and the Rams picked him up, and the story turned from there. But he was on his way as to being a joke in the league, and everybody going, see, you shouldn't have taken him first round. He's no good. But it was the Browns. It was the Panthers. It wasn't Baker Mayfield.
Can you imagine
I still
the
think
Panthers?
Levis can do that.
Imagine if the Panthers kept all their draft picks, never did the big trade up, right, to get Bryce Young. Imagine if they had just stayed where they were. They stayed at 10, right? They could have stayed at 10. They could have drafted, Christian Gonzalez. They could have drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. They could have drafted a number of players. Jaxson Smith-Njigba. Let's just say Jaxson Smith-Njigba, right? So you have DJ Moore. So you're not trading DJ Moore. You have DJ Moore, and then you also are getting Jaxson Smith-Njigba, and you're holding on to Baker Mayfield. How about that? How about that? And then you still retain all your picks. Where would that team be? Imagine where that team would be right now.
I don't know. $50 million to 33-year-old Adam Thielen is pretty appealing. That seems like a good way to build a franchise.
Well, it's
Jettison
one of the worst
Baker,
run
jettison
franchises.
DJ Moore.
Yeah, it's one of the worst run franchises in the league. It's not even close. I mean, as these teams keep getting better and better at front office moves, at injecting more and more analytics firepower into their thought process, the few teams that refuse to do it look worse and worse by comparison. And the Carolina Panthers are one of those teams. Now, I do want to ask you about FF Metrics. So that is your website, FF Metrics. Where do people follow you on Twitter X?
At FF Metrics, everything's pretty much FF Metrics on all the socials.
FF Metrics. I came on your podcast. You have a podcast wherever you get podcasts. Is it the FF Metrics podcast?
Yep.
Yep. So you get the FF Metrics podcast. I just want everyone to go and find RC wherever you are, ingesting fantasy football content, NFL content. Go find RC. Also, for this show, if you want us to go long, like the show, like it right now. If you're not subscribed, make sure you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to it. And if you do that, if I see a bunch of new subscribers come in and likes come in on the show, we will go super long. It'll be the longest show of the pre-draft offseason for fantasy football. I can promise you that. So tell us about FF Metrics.
Great question. I was thinking as you were talking and said fantasy football metrics, what's going on? I was just thinking back to my day today. My day started talking to an agent who is looking to sign a division or an FCS college player, wanted me to take a look at some of the tape and look at the data and kind of run through what I thought, whether I thought there was something to be had to be signed so that this agent could obviously get in on a contract, that there was more legs than just an undrafted free agent. So I have a couple agents that from time to time throughout the off season will tee me up players and say, could you take a look at this player? So I started my morning not planning to do that, but talking to an agent. Then I shifted over after I was done with that. I was talking to someone in my little football gambling circle, going over the prop bets that are starting to be put out on the different sports books. And I went from talking to an agent to talking gambling to then working on IDP rankings. The best way I can describe of what I'm doing all day long, all year long, is I am immersed in football. I am scouting football. I am watching all of this tape. I've done it for 15 years now, and I'm trying to make a profit off of my hard work. Not only having, things for subscribers, but I'm betting all these crazy things I'm about to say in the next 7 hours that we're on the show. I'm betting on these things. I bet on Will Levis. I bet against Marvin Harrison. I put my money where my mouth is to try to cash in on these scouting takes. And it's just a fly by night seat of my pants highlights take on scouting. I am living and scouting for hours and going back and forth like I did with Marvin Harrison just to make sure, am I getting this right? So I'm trying to profit off of it for fantasy. I'm trying to profit off of it on the FastDraft app. I'm trying to make money for myself and for my subscribers so that they make enough money that my subscription cost doesn't even phase them because they're going to run a profit somehow, some way. So I'm trying to be a profiteer for fantasy, betting, you name it. If it has to do with football, I am almost 24/7 immersed in football. Phone constantly ringing, texts lighting up. So I live it.
You're a popular guy.
Sometimes I'm a popular guy.
You're doing great, man. Let's get this reposted. I'm going to repost this on Twitter X. Make sure all the people know where to find us, how to tune in. This, it's just, you are like one of the great finds in my history in this business, and you know I'm every year your takes get better and better, and I don't know. I want someone to find me the guy that does more research than you. That's the thing. I personally, I can't do this myself. I am standing on the shoulders of people like Theo Greminger, go back through time, Josh Larkey, Cody Carpentier, so many people that are helping to support this organization. And then guests like yourself who are coming on and like, hey, I'm sharing all this rich, valuable information with you so you can go out and make lots of money in lots of different contests. And you mentioned FastDraft. You are an affiliate of FastDraft. Your code is FFM, Fantasy Football Metrics. And if you haven't signed up on FastDraft yet, go to the App Store, go to Google Play, download FastDraft. And because you're investing so much time with me today on this show, we want to compensate you. So what you can do is it says, use code Podfather, in the show notes or, on the YouTube screen. Fuck that. Don't use Podfather. Use code FFM and we'll give you a $100 deposit match.
Oh.
Not 25, not 50. We'll give you 100 because this is what we need to do. We need to you're providing value to us. We're going to give you value in return. And there is actually on FastDraft, there is an IDP game. Now everyone's talking about the rookie game, the Origins game, because that's where, savvy Dynasty leaguers can leverage their knowledge, especially of running backs. And you see the super savvy Dynasty leaguers come in and they just vacuum up running backs in the Origins rookie game. And there's $10,000 up for grabs in that contest. So there's also an IDP game called D-Up. And I'm noticing more and more IDP guys that have had to manually create leagues amongst themselves and then have never been able to really have a turnkey solution for IDP, being like, oh, wow, this actually is something that I can let all my IDP people know about, and we can go in and draft against each other, and it's not such a pain in the ass. And so that's just another thing. And with your IDP rankings. And with this, we're hoping that over time, and it's already starting to happen, but I mean, I'm talking about to an even bigger, wider audience, you start to get people dabbling in IDP where it's like, okay, I'm going to try it out, right? All I need to know is it's 60 guys get drafted. So we're talking about 2 players per team, 2 defenders per team. If I can know 2 defenders per team and draft them comfortably, I can play this game and I can get a sweat on Sunday on both sides of the ball. So that's what's kind of cool about having the IDP game out there, even though people told me, the luminaries in the business told me it's a waste of time. Don't put any energy behind IDP. And I was like, I think that's wrong, because I think the most passionate people that are super savvy and into fantasy football and also play in Dynasty and also play traditional best ball are the IDP guys. So that's certainly an audience that we want to cater to. So we've gone this far in the show covering one player, Will Levis. So let's just do a time check real quick, because again, this is going to be a long. We're almost 30 minutes in at this point, and we've talked about Will Levis.
New thumbnail.
This is the best. This is what we're talking about. But there's so much more to go. There's so many more players to talk about. It's very exciting. So let's get into it.
All right.
When you look at the running back class, this particular running back class is so good, so deep. It is so dangerous to all the veteran running backs that are out there right now. You're in a dynasty startup, okay? Let's say you're in a dynasty startup. This is a question that I posed to the Sonic Truth boys yesterday. You're in a dynasty startup. this rookie running back class is historic. Who is the last veteran running back that you would even dare burn a startup pick on at all?
For Dynasty.
Like, let's say, like, we're talking about, okay, you're in the double-digit rounds in a Dynasty startup, and people are starting to either select draft pick slots, whatever it is, or maybe rookies are in the player pool, even more fun, right? So, and it's all backup running backs at this point, right? So who is someone that you're willing to roster? We know Rachaad White, right? We like Rachaad White. Rachaad White actually has a lot of outs in the next couple of years. He's very interesting. Once you get past a Rachaad White, is there anyone else that's, maybe the RB2, even an RB3 on an NFL roster that you'd be rostering in a startup?
Rachaad White was the first name that came to mind, right up there with him and just a quick note on Rachaad White. I was told a couple weeks ago by a source I have some faith in, we'll see how this pans out, that the Raiders are trying to trade easily for Rachaad White. That doesn't mean they're not going to take a running back in the first round or whatever, but that Tom Brady worked with Rachaad his first 2 years in Tampa Bay, and he has a very good feel, has an affinity for the way Rachaad White works, and that they're trying to get him on the cheap now that Tampa Bay is all Bucky Irving. So Rachaad is there. I like Zach Charbonnet still in the Seattle mix. I might have said Braylon Allen for the future, but I mean, this year now with Justin Fields pick. There. Well,
that's a good pick
for the future, but I was hoping that maybe the future would be more this year. But now that Justin Fields is there, you're going to have reduced PPR. He might not get all those short touchdowns he might have been in store for if Fields decides to keep those short touchdown runs. So I want to get more excited. I really like Braylon Allen.
That was the case against Barkley last year, right? You're making the case against Barkley last year.
Yeah. So I mean,
there's also the fact that he's going to be more efficient with Justin Fields as a threat.
I was also hoping that the Jets were going to trade, that the new regime was going to trade Breece Allen at the top of the market since they had Braylon Allen in the hole, and that Breece Hall is coming up on that time where he's going to ask for a gazillion dollars that you don't want to put into a running back, especially when you have Braylon Allen in the hole.
How is he going to ask for $1 billion if he hasn't produced yet? He doesn't have a 1,000-yard rushing season. How can he ask for a lot of money? He wasn't a first-round pick.
That's how they do. They're going to ask. He's going to demand big money. Whether he gets it or not is going to be a whole separate issue. But he's coming up on that time where the two guys coming up in mind that are going to be asking for a lot and are going to be a potential issue for their teams. Breece Hall, but I think George Pickens this year is going to be a headache on the contract front as well, putting them both potentially as guys I've thought and heard some rumblings, especially on Pickens being traded because of it.
People suck. Okay. People suck. I have the perfect example of people sucking. Someone just tunes in, Crypto G sunshine emoji, tunes in, says, "Isn't this the guy that liked Will Levis last year?" Okay. Like, the cherry picking.
Maybe it's just a basic question. The answer is yes. Yeah. I'm that guy.
Yeah, but that is such a biased, jerk comment. right? To cherry pick of all the takes, of all the award-winning takes. You at one point 2 years ago said that Rachaad White would score more fantasy points than Bijan Robinson, and that's a thing that happened, and everyone laughed at you. When you said fade Marvin Harrison, everyone laughed at you. When you said, Kaleb Williams is not even the second best quarterback in this class, everybody laughed at you, right? They mocked you. And then you came up over the top and said, nah. And then you were like, I actually still believe in Will Levis. And then Will Levis struggles with one of the worst supporting casts in the league. And that's the take they're going to identify. That's the take they're going to put out there publicly and post on the message board and put out on a billboard and let the public know, hey, I want to make sure we expose this guy for this take that wasn't exactly 100% accurate. And I might have burned, a late round pick on a guy. And I wish I could get that late round pick back instead of focusing on all the early capital and the incredibly valuable picks that you save people who might have, lost like over 100 lifetime value points looking at the player profiler dynasty rankings on Marvin Harrison vis-a-vis Malik Nabers. What you saved people last year in terms of dynasty value and roster valuation for 2026, 2027, 2028 is impossible to calculate at this point. And yet they fixate on, you liked a guy that wasn't drafted in the first round who was a sleeper last year and it didn't work out.
That is the way of the world. That is every year of my life. It's when I came on your show, and I was also on XM on somebody's show, Cirrus, and I said not only was I of the belief that Malik Nabers was way better than Marvin Harrison. To me, that was an easy one. To say that Marvin Harrison wasn't one of the 5 best wide receivers in that draft class, that takes a lot of balls. That was a lot of hard work.
You said Ladd McConkey was better.
Ladd McConkey,
you
Brian
said
Thomas.
Ladd McConkey is better. So think about, if someone took that advice, think about what they would have been able to do. Flipping the pick that would have been Marvin Harrison and then drafting Ladd McConkey and then making the playoffs versus not making the playoffs with that Ladd McConkey production and then banking whatever they got in return, at the very least, a 2025 second rounder. At the very least, if not a 2025 first rounder. And that's going to end up being, at the very least, RJ Harvey, who's poised to be just awesome. And then when you extrapolate it out, just the value that you are generating for people and the amount of money that you're making for them, it's I just can't believe that you're not on more Dynasty podcasts, and I'm fine with it. Like, I'm fine with it. Like, you have a lot of responsibilities. You are in constant communication with agents and people around the league, and the fact that you actually make time for this show and not other shows, we're blessed. And the people in the chat talking about Will Levis, on a loop. Like, we start the show, the first comment is Will Levis. And then we go to pivot and start talking about other players. And the first comment is another Will Levis comment. It's a sad state of affairs for humanity. And yet it makes for great content.
I know.
It's great. I gotta, please bring it on. I'd love to complain more about the chat. There's nothing better than complaining about the chat. And you might say, well, you're filibustering because you're going to try to go over 2 hours. You don't have enough content. So you're going to try to, rant about the chat to try to pad your, minute statistics being live. And that's fair. That's fair.
I don't think you have to worry about that when we're together. I don't think you have to find minutes.
And then the beauty is we should just make sure that we acknowledge all the people in the chat that are being sarcastic, that are tearing down X Crypto G, making sure they're putting him there. There's sarcasm going on. Hey, I drafted Will Levis in the first round last year. Thanks a lot, RC. So there's a lot of fun sarcasm, and so that's the thing. It's a self-healing community. The chat will fix itself. We don't need to call it out. They will fix themselves. They will put the offenders off to the side just fine, and they don't need me to embarrass them. But I will do it anyway because it's fun content.
And I want those people to keep getting their information from wherever they're getting it. If they think that they're the know-it-alls of the world, because we're competing against them, we're betting against them. I don't need them I don't need everybody adopting and driving the odds and the ADPs.
Well, we always ask for their hottest take. That's always my response. Also, I was like, well, what is your most daring, counterintuitive position on a player? And then nothing, right? No one has the courage to do what you're doing, right? It was to the point where, okay, this is just to give everyone some insights, some behind the scenes insights, where I actually had to call Theo and tell him that I was going to greenlight your quote being posted to our Twitter, because he was like, are you sure you want to do this? And I was like, yes. He's like, this is so far off of ADP that you're okay with any potential reputational damage to the brand by putting something this crazy out there. And I love Theo because that's where his head is at, right? He is. I love having like the devil and the angel on my shoulder, and then they can debate. And then so you and Theo, even though you're not in the same room, are essentially debating each other. And then I'm thinking about both sides of that argument, and I'm like, go with it. Go with it. Publish it. Go to print. Right? So that's what it was. I felt like Ben Bradley from the Washington Post. Right? It's like we're going to print with it. I don't care. We're going to print with it. Let the White House deny it. Right? Let the fantasy gamers deny it. Go ahead. We're going to print with it.
And I so appreciate it. And there's going to be some more coming up this show, I'm sure. But the one thing to kind of wrap all the Will Levis stuff up, the only thing that bothers me, people bringing it up and making jokes about it.
I'm going to interrupt you. We have X Cryptos back in the chat with the hot take that Josh Downs will lead the Colts in receptions. No, I think that's not a joke. I think they really think that's a good hot take.
You should have some special sound effect.
Justin Herbert leads the AFC West in passing touchdowns. This is what these people are giving us? You got to be hotter than that. What's at stake? You're in a live chat that's going to go away at the end of the show. Like, there's no reputational damage at all. You could be as hot and endearing as possible, and I'll put it up on the screen. If you put a reasonable yet super contrarian take in this chat, I will put it up there on the board and we will talk about it. But what I'm seeing right now is just lukewarm.
And to kind of wrap it up, the only thing that I don't like about the criticisms, the whole, bringing it up in the chat and poking fun or seriously gigging, that's totally cool. But the one thing that I think is wrong is when people say that I say about Marvin Harrison or Will Levis, oh, he's just trying to get a hot take to try to get attention. Who wants this attention? First off, I really believe everything that I'm saying. I live it all day long. I'm watching it on tape. I'm studying every day for the last 10 to 15 years at the expense of my health from sitting in a chair too much, to my eyes from watching the computer too much, to everything you can imagine to try to get to the truth of football players, to see where I can leverage in and gain an advantage fantasy-wise, monetarily, it is not a hot take for the sense of getting some attention. I only get negative attention. I get no new business or anything with when I said Marvin Harrison was not one of the top 5 wide receivers in last year's draft class. Nobody was beating down my door to invite me on their shows to talk about it.
Nope.
No one jumped in and subscribed and said, "Oh yeah, I've been thinking that all along," and nobody agrees with that. So I see the light. I'll get a bunch of email. You're crazy. You don't know who are you. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Everybody's my favorite. Everybody said so. Everybody in football says that Marvin Harrison is an elite generational talent, and you don't think he's one of the top 5 guys. You need to do this to yourself and that to your body and everything else. And here we are a year later, and no one could deny that Marvin Harrison is he was not the best wide receiver in that draft. I still say he's not even one of the best 5. I'll extend it out to maybe he's not even one of the best 10 wide receivers from last year's draft.
Whoa.
But
who you got? You're adding like Pearsall?
I don't know. Now I'm being hyperbolic.
Yeah, I don't know what you're saying. You got to understand that was a pretty shallow draft class. It was very top heavy. You got to watch out. Just for your own health. I'm just trying to. Yeah. You're putting your health at risk here by sitting in a chair and looking at a computer screen. You're really doing some difficult work out here. You're a martyr for us. Listen, everybody. He's really putting his health on the line here, sitting in a chair. So.
For hours on end,
make sure
getting atrophy.
We're not going to clip that, because if you actually go down the rankings and figure out who's from this class, is going to be tricky. You're not going to be able to find. You're not going to be able to find 10 guys that are better than Marvin Harrison. You're not going to be able to do that. So I'm just telling you, explaining it. So don't say that. But point taken. Your takes, especially like the most successful clip that we've ever posted of yours was Rachaad White over Bijan Robinson for total fantasy points in 2023. And that one went over 1 million views on TikTok with a lot of negative criticisms and comments, which is what propelled its popularity. And I did go back and I checked after the season was over, RC. I went back and looked at that TikTok post, and nobody apologized. No one came back and said, "I'm sorry for calling you an idiot." No one. They said you're an idiot, and they moved on with life, and no one ever went back to hold themselves accountable and apologize.
This is my life. Every month, every year.
Now, it is super interesting. I just want to make sure that we highlight this comment that you made from before. I don't want to let it kind of just fall through the sand in the hourglass here. Rachaad White is incredibly valuable right now, and his cost is still very low. He is an all-purpose back with size and is one of the better receiving running backs in the league. He just happened to be supplanted by some electric rookie that the coaches became enamored with, who, if given a full workload in 2025, will very likely go down with an injury. The outs that Rachaad White has are, all of them. Like, he has the World's Fair. He has every out in the deck. He could be traded. He could reassume the starting role because of injury. He could, hit free agency after being efficient on limited touches in 2025, be a lightly used race car, end up securing a Najee Harris plus contract next year, and become the starting running back for a team that needs an all-purpose running back with excellent hands out of the backfield. So this is the guy. This is the best value running back in Dynasty, who is incredibly easy to acquire, We talked about this yesterday on the Sonic Truth. Finding players that you want and then not necessarily just offering up a trade 1-for-1 for that guy. Sometimes you offer a trade where you don't even include that guy. You engage that dynasty manager that has Rachaad White. You talk about a trade. You even throw out a first offer without Rachaad White. And then when they counter, your counter then includes Rachaad White. So this is a Trojan horse situation. So there's a handful of Trojan horse targets in Dynasty, the players with maximum outs that are currently just downtrending because they're out of fashion. No better example than Rachaad White.
And if Rachaad White is on the move, if he gets traded, or next year when he goes to free agency, everything that you just said that was 100% true, you can transfer it to Sean Tucker.
Yeah.
When Rachaad is gone. Sean Tucker is fantastic.
So maybe that is actually the answer. So, okay, as good as Sean Tucker is, he's not more valuable. He doesn't go earlier in startups than Rachaad White. So my pick for this, I don't know, it depends on the startup, whether Rachaad White would go before or after a Blake Corum. I think both of them would go after Braylon Allen. So after Braylon Allen, then you get into a Blake Corum, Rachaad White zone where you would go ahead and pick that guy over maybe the draft picks that are available in the startup. But I agree with you, at the end of a startup, I would like to get Sean Tucker because, again, there's outs again. Because let's say there's a Bucky Irving injury because they're trying to roll with a 198-pound starting running back, and that typically ends poorly for that running back. And then there's all the idea that teams are calling Tampa because they know they have a surplus of running back talent, and they're trying to target Rachaad White. And boom, lots of different ways that Sean Tucker can rise up the depth chart and start to earn more opportunities and accrue lots of dynasty value. I mean, he's the type of running back that could 4x his dynasty value. It's pretty easy to see that happening, actually.
There's off the top of my head, there's not a better number 3 running back in the current NFL rosters the way that we know them now before the draft. There's not a number 3 running back that's more talented than Sean Tucker. So this is not just next man up, he's the guy that happens to be there. This is Sean Tucker when he filled in last year. I mean, I watched all that Tampa Bay tape and games live and then on tape during the weeks to just try to get a feel for, like, are they really going with Bucky Irvin? Are they really downplaying Rachaad? So I watched all of it like a hawk and charted it and tried to interpret it. Then there was that moment where both of them were sick or hurt or something, and Sean Tucker got thrust into the starting lineup, and he was better running, though. He was better than, he had like I forget the numbers of the game that he had, but he was sensational. And then when the other guys came back, especially when Bucky came back, Sean Tucker can't even get he can't even get a touch. And it's not the Tampa Bay system, it's Sean Tucker.
In the comments, they said, find someone who loves you like Matt and RC love Rachaad White. And I think that, the Dynasty League audience needs to make up their mind. Do they want analysts with conviction or not? Like they say, don't flip-flop. Do they want a flip-flopper or do they want an analyst with conviction? Right? There are certainly situations where I am going to reassess, and based on new information, I'm going to adjust. That is going to happen. And I've seen the new information on Rachaad White. I've seen the new information on a handful of players, and I'm not changing. Like, I've seen the new information on Kyron Williams and James Cook and Bucky Irving. I've processed it. And I don't like them at cost in any format still. And I like Rachaad White even more at cost based on all the information that's there. And I'm not going to play fantasy football from a position of fear. I'm not a fear-based drafter. And I don't let a guy burning me last year affect whether I draft him this year. That is the worst. There isn't a worse state of mind in fantasy football than not drafting a player because you're afraid that they're going to underperform because you were overweight on them the year prior. Every time, like clockwork, that player ends up rebounding and you have none of them.
And everybody chases last year's stars, and then they let them down or get hurt, and then they proclaim, I'm never going to draft with the number 1 overall pick again because they never work. Last year was last year. It's a whole new ball game. There's new bargains, there's new coaches, there's new offensive line situations, there's new schedules. It's every year, and then now with all the talent coming in from the draft, the game changes so fast now. We need to talk about these bargains. What's the point of talking about how stable Bijan Robinson is?
We're now 56 minutes in. We've got through one question. We've had one question on the show sheet, which is the Firewall running back in startups. And we've answered it now. The answer is actually not Rachaad White. It is Sean Tucker. That is the answer. And for the podcast, we need to do the proper introduction, right? For this show, we always want to make sure we get the proper introduction when I can think about it. Sometimes I forget to do the Bulls intro because I don't like to do it at the beginning. I like to do it at some point once we get to know each other. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program, the greatest guest in the history of this podcast. The award-winning take artist is here with me today from the Fantasy Football Veterans. It is RC Fischer. Talk to me.
Now we can start the show. We weren't live before, were we?
We're an hour in.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That was an hour of pre-show. If you tune into the podcast, we typically like to put those in the outtakes. I don't know if we're gonna have an hour of outtakes for the podcast. I don't know what we're gonna do. I don't know. If you listen on Apple, on iTunes, it's just a different show. It's a little bit different show. The Mind of Mansion's a very different show on Apple iTunes. We do the whole monologue, and then we do the intro and kind of edit it together. The live show on YouTube is it's totally a little more freewheeling experience, and so some people listen to both. It's great. So now we have the first and I think most important question for you. How do you rank this draft class against the other draft classes we've had in recent memory?
I think this class is trying to make an argument overall, if you take out quarterback, that it's arguably as good as last year's draft. For fantasy, for NFL purposes, there's just so much talent. These athletes are getting so much better training throughout their entire existence. The supplements, the medical advances, the workout advances, this is such a deep class. We can talk about, which wide receiver class was better, which running back class is better. I think we probably both agree last year's wide receiver class was amazing. This year's running back class is amazing. This year's tight end group is really nice. If it wasn't for quarterback, I think this class would get a lot more love, but the quarterbacks are so bad. It's dragging down the entire class. But outside of quarterback, there's just... for me as a scout that goes through all of these receivers, that goes through a couple hundred receivers, 100 plus running backs, and you start getting down on the list and you start looking at small school guys, I'm just amazed every time I turn around, I find another player where I'm like, that looks like on tape, that looks like a legit top 100, 150 overall prospect at running back, at wide receiver, and they're probably not even going to get drafted. Usually in a draft over the past years, like if there was one of those guys, I'd be all excited and like, ooh, there's my guy, there's my undrafted free agent guy. Now I've got a dozen, I've got 15, I got 20 guys that might go undrafted that I go, they are legit talents that just didn't go to the right school, or they got hurt in their senior year and missed games, so they didn't have the raw total numbers that got them attention. But I'm excited about this class outside of quarterback.
I'm going to put up on the screen the guy that did it for me, the guy that really helped to open my eyes to the potential of this draft class and why I think it's competitive for fantasy football specifically with the 2024 class, and that's Jaylin Noel. Jaylin Noel goes to the combine, runs a 4.39, comes in best comparable to Rashee Rice, and he's not even the best receiver on his team. This is amazing. Like, the guy puts up a 63% dominator rating, and yet he's, competing for targets with a guy who's bigger, faster, and even stronger. And, then you talk to people that are like, I was tuning in to watch Jaden Higgins, and I couldn't take my eyes off Jaylin Noel. And I love that. I love it so much when there's two receivers on the same team cannibalizing each other, and they hold down the draft stock and the overall value from each other. That's why we have the teammate score in the Breakout Finder app. So this was a guy, when I saw the combine numbers for Jaylin Noel come in and I went and dug in, I was like, oh, God, look at this guy. Where are you at with these Iowa State receivers?
Before the combine, when I saw the tape, when I went through the season of Jaylin Noel, I was like, this wide receiver group is vastly underrated, because I think Noel is the third best wide receiver in this class, arguably the second. And my comp for him would be more, if you were going to take last year's wide receiver class and this year's wide receiver class and go, okay, Nabers number one, who am I going to put up against them from this class as number one? When I get down to Lad McConkey as a representative from 2024, I think Noel is a possible Lad McConkey-like wide receiver, where he's going to operate in the slot. He's just not going to be the deep ball outside guy, but he can do that. I think he's an all-around receiver talent and a great background. Everything is great with him. And when I didn't have him on my radar early on, but when I watched the Senior Bowl practices, and he didn't necessarily catch my eye there, but then I saw he was voted by his teammates as the top wide receiver in practice, and I'm like, how is that possible? Then I went back and watched the Senior Bowl tape over again, just focusing on him, and I'm like, oh crap, this is kind of like McConkey, where the guy just gets open. He can get open on everybody, and that's such a gift in the NFL, more of a gift than speed and height and range and everything else. I want guys who can get open in a blink, and Noel does that. Oh, by the way, he's a 4.3s runner, and he can pull away from you, and he's got a good frame, and he plays tough. He doesn't play like a wispy finesse speed wide receiver. He I could say Lad McConkey. I could also say baby Amon-Ra St. Brown with speed. So I'm super high on him.
You should be. You should be, absolutely. This is what people want Luther Burden to be. This is what they want him to be. All Noel does is get better and better every year. That yards per reception keeps getting better and better. He goes from like a 70% catch rate. Oh, in his third year, 72% catch rate. How is this even possible? Like 7 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns. And then the special teams production, put up close to 2,000 special teams yards during his time at Iowa State. So when you have the athleticism and the football skills, you mesh them together, and then you hide how good he is by pairing him with Jaden Higgins so that the production numbers don't jump off the page. This is the type of receiver that I would love to draft, and I typically do not like drafting receivers outside the first round in Dynasty rookie drafts. But Noel and Higgins and Aomenor, depending on where Aomenor falls in rookie drafts, this is the sweet spot, I think, for value in rookie drafts, or these guys. And, I mean, I could easily see him being the Luke McConkey of this draft. Why not? Why not? Look at the numbers.
And because he can get open, there are guys who put up numbers through various ways, whether it's talent, high volume. They played 16 games in a season. But just watching the tape of Noel at work, especially on an Iowa State team that wasn't like the greatest passing. It's not like they're known for their clever passing game. He just jumped out. He's one of the 3 guys that really jumped out watching all the higher end wide receivers, guys invited to the combine, that you just put on the tape and you're like, wow, this is a guy. And then you see him, not even in the, I think he's starting to pierce the top 10 wide receivers in the rookie ranks. But he wasn't a couple months ago. He was not.
I can tell you, spoiler alert, where we have him in the Dynasty rankings, go to Player Profiler, subscribe to the Dynasty rankings. We have him on the cusp of the top 5. He is knocking on the door of the top 5. It's him and Aomenor, right? It's those two together. It's like, oh, God, between those 2 guys. Oh, man. It's tough stuff. We do have him also, I will say, full transparency, we have him ahead of Higgins. You do too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Why?
Noel is special in whichever way you look at him. You look at the tape, you look at the production, you look at the combine, everything's wonderful. When I watched Higgins, I started to get a little cool on him. He is excellent off the snap. He can get open on anybody, but he plays, he's very finesse. He gets caught up in trying to be too cute with his routes off the snap. And as I watched him and I watched Noel at the same time, I'm like, Noel just looks like a star. He just carries himself. He just looks like he's better than everybody else. Higgins is good, but in the face of Noel, to me, it's no comparison.
And I like players like Noel. That to me is the new NFL. 5'11", 200 pounds with great athleticism and just get all those dog characteristics. That's what I'm looking for. And no one's allowed to be surprised when he outperforms Burden and Matthew Golden and all these guys. We look up and like, oh yeah, Jaylin Noel. I guess it was kind of obvious. I think more obvious than Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey's prospect profile did not jump off the page either. Like Jaylin Noel actually, has more production on his resume than even Ladd McConkey did. But again, a lot of talent around them at the college level, which prevented them from putting up the 1,500-yard season, that type of thing. Technically, Higgins commanded more targets last year than Noel. It's interesting, but that doesn't necessarily translate to the NFL. If you're a college quarterback, I can see Higgins being your first read, just because he's got the big body. In the NFL, a little bit different game. I can see Noel being a higher volume player. You mentioned the quarterback class being particularly awful this year. Is there a quarterback you like at all?
I mean, Cam Ward is fine. I
Okay.
like him. I'm not over the moon with him, but I think he's good. The only other quarterback off that grid, off the top couple names, and he's kind of working his way into the top couple of names, is uh, when I got the Senior Bowl list of who was attending. When I get that, I spend a week going through every player that's going to the Senior Bowl and watching 10, 15, 20 minutes of tape so I can get familiar with them, give them a kind of a pre-grade so that I know and my subscribers know just kind of a what's in store, who are these guys at first glance. And then I'm going to grade them afterwards after I see what they did. Um, when I put on the tape of Shug, and I had no idea who he was, I don't watch any college football during the regular NFL season. I put on the tape of this guy that I'd never heard of before, and I was just instantly like, wow, how high is this guy ranked? And then I look and see nobody even cares. So I'm watching it, and I um, hit up somebody who scouts along with me, and I'm like, what do you think about this Tyler Shug? Have you seen, like, I don't know who this is. I'm like, watch this tape. Like, this guy is good. Like, what's his story? Then you see that he didn't play for 6 years. I'm like, oh God, what, like, this backstory is terrible. But I just, from
Well,
the
what is the
tape,
backstory? Tell the backstory.
uh, 3 years at Oregon, I believe, and I'm just going off of memory, 3 years off at Oregon behind Herbert, um, then transferred to Texas Tech, or maybe he was Texas Tech first and then Oregon, but he was constantly behind another quarterback. Then I think he was having a breakout moment and got hurt, had it taken away from him. Then he transferred to Louisville, where he had a really nice season last year. I think he's 6 years of college play. Um, I don't know how guys like him get overlooked in the draft and by NFL teams, and they get pigeonholed to backup. So I don't know if there's anything great fantasy wise here right off the bat. I just know, looking through all of these guys, Tyler Shug can play. And then when I saw him starting to get heat off of his senior, because I thought he did well at the Senior Bowl. When he started to get heat and people started to talk about him, like, hey, this Tyler Shug, it made me feel better that I was like, am I seeing ghosts? Like, am I crazy that this 6-year college quarterback is actually good, like a legit NFL quarterback? So I'm not saying he's the next great NFL quarterback, but if I'm drafting from round 2 on, the guys that are graded round 2 on, I would take Tyler Shug over everybody else in this quarterback class. Now, if you had Shug in last year's quarterback class, we're not even talking about him.
Well, he ran the 40 at the combine.
And he ran it fairly well.
4.6. Pretty good. Pretty good at 6'5", 220. To run a 4.6, 40. That's impressive. That's really impressive. And he's the type of profile I like I talked about. I was not a Will Levis advocate coming out. I'm not a tools drafter at quarterback. I like to see, first and foremost, the nice touchdown interception ratio. I want to see that. That's more predictive. And there it is. Like, that's the Dak Prescott corollary. Get a guy in the 4th, 5th round with a nice touchdown interception ratio in a competitive conference. He's going to have a chance in the NFL. And so
And there's
Chuck had 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in his final year at Louisville. At age 25.
But look at the age of quarterbacks now. I mean, he's got 10 years in front of him easy in today's NFL.
Yeah.
But if not only the his number production last year was good, but you have to look in and wait for the opponent. Put waiting on where is he getting his numbers from. I watched him against Notre Dame, who had a really nice defense, and he just went out and was fantastic. I think it was Notre Dame it was some top team um, that he played. I'm going to have to look it up now or it's going to drive me nuts. Uh, but I thought, oh yeah, it was Notre Dame because it was Riley Leonard, I believe, he was going up against.
Shout out to John Paul Taylor in the chat doing some work, comping Higgins to Cortland Sutton. I think it's a great comp. Cortland Sutton is big, but he plays softer, smaller than his size. That's a great comp there. Shuck plays the game like a kid in the backyard. He slings it, takes off with the ball. It's fun to watch. He also broke his collarbone twice. So maybe he's the college version of Matthew Stafford.
That would be nice.
Maybe not. So, Shedeur Sanders, you're not a fan?
No.
No. So you wouldn't draft him in the first round? If you're an NFL team.
NFL team, I wouldn't draft him in any round. I don't want that circus. I mean, if you just talk talent, if you just go, okay, how talented is this guy? We're talking maybe a C quarterback grade at best. Throws the short ball fine when he's got protection. Everybody runs to his defense saying, oh, he had this terrible offensive line. It's not his offensive line. Just like it wasn't with Kaleb Williams at USC, is he holds on to the ball too long when the defense is the opposition is equal to or better than Colorado. He panics in the pocket, but if everything's clean, he throws a nice 5 to 10 yard pass. Otherwise, he's just flinging things out to Travis Hunter and friends and getting numbers off of it. A lot of his numbers came from 5-10 yard strike to Travis Hunter, and then Travis Hunter just takes it to the house, or the other kid who ran real fast at the combine from Colorado. He had good wide receivers to work with, but at best, I think this is a C grade NFL quarterback. But then you add on, you're going to have Deion Sanders chirping to the media every game that he plays if he disagrees with the coach or what wide receivers they have. Like you're inviting a circus at a position that you need a grown, mature adult to be the face of your franchise, to be the leader of your locker room. And meanwhile, you got Shedeur going to buy his 7th luxury car in his 4th mansion that he's got. I just, that type of guy, I don't want anything to do with. If he was amazing as a talent, you'd go, okay, how do we make this work? But I just don't think he's that. I think he's just a very average quarterback talent with a circus that's going to come to town when he comes to town.
He did have 2 professional receivers on the team, if not 3, with Will Shepard, right?
Yeah.
So you got Jimmy
I think
Horn,
Shepard's pretty good.
Right? You got Shepard, you got Jimmy Horn, I mean, you got Travis Hunter. This is a real array of weapons. And in that context, yeah, he took care of the football. He had the nice touchdown interception ratio, but he wasn't running hardly at all. He took more sacks and he had rushing yards.
But then when he played like Nebraska to begin the year, if you watch the Nebraska tape, and a lot of people point that out, but you also watch the BYU tape at the end of the season, when he went up against really good defenses, he was terrible. He wasn't just off or struggled. He was terrible. So I just don't see the allure with Sanders. Shug is better. Maybe even the kid from Memphis, Hennigan, might be better, or they're all in the same range. So why would I want to draft Shedeur when I'm going to get him and all his activities, and I'm going to get his dad commenting on everything we do, and I'm going to get his dad wanting to be my new head coach? Like I don't want anything to do with that type of personality at quarterback. I'll tell you, if you want to be my edge rusher, you want to be my shutdown corner, you want to be my wide receiver diva, if you're great, I'll tell you, but not at quarterback. So I am not interested, and he's going to struggle immediately in the NFL. Even if he turns it around in 3 or 4 years and gets it together and grinds and really buckles down, great. That's for fantasy purposes or NFL purposes, that somebody else is going to enjoy the fruits of that labor. So I don't see Shedeur hitting the ground running. I think it's going to be a big problem.
If you're an NFL GM, this is in the back of your mind that there are just more outside distractions with Sanders than there are other players. And if it's not a difference maker talent-wise, right, if you can basically get a guy with that profile in free agency, why are you burning a draft pick on that guy? The risk-reward, where is it? Right? Because, again, we're here with John Paul Taylor in the chat. This show is me, RC Fischer, and John Paul Taylor. And if you have great football takes, tune in live on X or on YouTube to the show, the Mind of Mansion Show, and subscribe to the channel and turn on that alert bell so you know when we're about to go live. Then you can participate in the live show. And if you're anything like John Paul Taylor in terms of having great takes, this guy's one great take after another. Again, it's like I feel like it's a three-man show at this point with JPT. He said, "Don't hate me, but Shedeur reminds me of Teddy Bridgewater." He's Teddy Bridgewater with hype.
And I think that's a good take as a talent that has some logic to it. But where it will diverge is Teddy Bridgewater was beloved in the locker room, was seen as a leader, was tough as nails.
Here we go.
And
go.
Shedeur,
this is where you say Sanders is worse than Teddy Bridgewater.
Well, whether he is or he isn't, let me up the stakes. What's going to happen to Shedeur is he's going to be such a nuisance. He's going to be so hated by the locker room. They're going to call a code red and beat him with bars of soap wrapped in towels because they can't stand him and can't stand his attitude. So talent-wise aside, you could argue what level of C grade he is, but I think the circus that he brings to town is it's almost going to be impossible for him to get out of the gates.
Now, most people are going to say you're a little out of line by suggesting there's going to be a hazing incident with Shedeur Sanders. Though I would remind everyone, before you run out and jump to conclusions about this, there was a famous hazing incident, and it was suggested that one of the reasons why this player was hazed is because his father was a famous former player. Craig James' son, once upon a time, was locked in an equipment shed in Texas in the summer by Mike Leach. Love Mike Leach, but he did do this one bad thing. Okay,
didn't his dad sue him?
He did this one bad thing. There was a lawsuit involved. It was shameful. You don't do that to someone, especially in Texas. It's too hot. I mean, I can't believe that it happened. There's something missing with that story. It's one of those things where I can't criticize Mike Leach too full-throatedly because there just seems to be something. There's some common sense element that you would assume is there that anyone with a brain would know you can't do that. It would be like 150 degrees in there. So and the guy's wearing a football uniform. I just can't see it, but that's the story that was told, that there was a lawsuit. And so we've seen this happen where just because you're famous or your father is famous does not protect you from a hazing incident of some kind. Now, I think that in the NFL, it's a professional organization. That's not going to happen. And certainly if your father's the coach, that's not going to happen. But we have seen resentments build from either the coaches or the players against other players that are seen to have an advantage that has been given to them, bequeathed to them by their recruiting profile, their family history, whatever it is. So that's a thing that happened at Texas Tech.
I would like to be there the first time they're at practice or whatever, and one of the veterans says, rookies carry our bags to the bus or to the practice field or whatever. I'd like to see the reaction, and I'd like to see what Shedeur does when they give him that type of rookie hazing, the carry our bags, he's
Right.
never been in that position. And I personally think, just from watching him in interviews and watching he thinks he is 10 miles above everybody because of his last name. I mean, it drips off of him. There are players you could wonder or suspect. I mean, Shedeur embraces it. He wears it like a blanket over his shoulders. So I think he's in for such trouble. Whatever team drafts him is going to be regretting that big time. And beyond him, Dion's got the same mouth, he's going to be making comments on his podcast about the offensive line and how he could coach it better. He's already come out and said he's only going to coach in the NFL if he coaches his son. So I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know, the Giants take him at number 3. I wouldn't be surprised if Deion Sanders said, I'll be the head coach. I'll do it for $1. I just want to be my son's head coach. I want to save him in the NFL. So you're going to have to put up with that pressure on top of everything else, all for a C-grade quarterback? I don't get it.
The position is so hard that if you come in with an outsized ego, it will absolutely bring you down. Right? Who is the greatest quarterback of all time? Tom Brady. Famously came into the league with the ego already completely drained out of him. Right? He was shamed in the running the 40. It was just everything was just, he ran a 5-something 40, and for decades after that they play it on a loop to mock him. He barely got drafted after he was constantly and unfairly benched at the college level. I mean, Tom Brady's college experience and pre-draft experience is the polar opposite to Shedeur Sanders, with one exception. They both were technically, game managers that were winners at the college level. Very similar. It's just one had a very different experience, came into the league humble, and was able to kind of kick off his career with a positive note and just go from there. And it was just a straight line up, where you have to imagine that if you don't come in having been laid low already, everyone gets laid low. Josh Allen, everyone gets laid low. Jalen Hurts, everyone. Jalen Hurts was not a first-round pick, right? There's so many of these, Super Bowl winners, star players. We talked about Matthew Stafford. He's made of glass. Remember that criticism of Matthew Stafford? Every year he's breaking his collarbone. He's overcoming all this adversity. That it's going to be a very volatile first few years because he's coming in on such a high, and the league is necessarily going to extract that out of him, Shedeur Sanders, and it will be a setback, and it's something that it's a tough sell, isn't it? It's got to be a tough sell, isn't it? This is one of those situations where you think ownership is going to get involved and make the pick on the GM's behalf. So, for example, New York is the perfect case study here. Where is it Joe or Joel showing?
Joe,
right? I was on with the Undroppables, Jax Falcone, on their podcast, and we were debating this. We had a whole rant about Joe Schoen, and at the time I was like, he's so forgettable. I don't even know if his name's Joe or Joel. I can't remember, and I don't care. So he still has a job, and you have to wonder how he's still employed after the equity holder, the top equity holder, told him not to let Barkley go, and then he let Barkley go. So there must be some deal that was struck that, like, hey, I now have override control over your decision making if you want to keep this job. I can only imagine that that's what the Maras did. I mean, I only hope. So given that, you could see that would be a destination where really it's not even up to showing.
An owner could get tricked into it for sure. There's one team that if he falls, the owner would welcome the circus. And that's the Dallas Cowboys.
And also they want Dion to coach it.
And then they're a year away from Dion coaching it. And they'll be the talk of the league. They may not be any good, but I don't know if I know Jerry wants to win a title, but short of winning a title, he wants to be relevant. The Cowboys are quickly becoming very irrelevant. They would be the talk of the town if they got Dion in as head coach and had Sanders as the backup and jettisoned Dax.
Please, for the love of God, please, can we get New York to pass on Sanders and then for him to be in free fall and for it to be, of all teams, the Dallas Cowboys, Deion Sanders' former club, stepping into the breach, and then all the controversy around Dak Prescott and Shedeur Sanders and everything that's going to come with it. Please, for the sake of content, for the sake of sports content, for years to come, make this happen. If this is a simulation that we're living in, this has to happen, dude.
And I think it will happen. I wouldn't be shocked if Cleveland and the Giants get backed into having to make this pick because they don't get a quarterback in the musical chairs game. But I think it's going to happen that Sanders is going to fall. And the more he starts to fall, the talk is going to be people didn't like his interview. People are worried about the Dion. And as he falls, it'll be Dallas trading up into like 28, giving up their second round pick and some other stuff to just do a basic move into the first round to take them. I don't think Dallas may not have to burn their Midland pick that they have in the first round. They can trade up into the late first round and potentially get them. Or
Dallas has the 12th pick.
Yeah.
They have the 12th pick in the draft. Why can't he slide there? Remember Aaron Rodgers, he was supposed to be drafted in the top 10. He ended up falling to what, pick 18? Will Levis was supposed to be a first-round pick.
Levis was supposed to be a first-round pick. Pickett in the...
I had to do it to you, RC. I had to mention it. Of course, we're going back to Levis.
In the Kenny Pickett draft, with a noticeable lack of quarterbacks like this year, Pickett was the number one guy, and he was mocked anywhere from top 5 to later in the, but he ended up going 20 to Pittsburgh. So I could see Sanders with the baggage that he has falling back, and people trying to come up, and maybe even Dart gets taken ahead of Sanders. I think when the Sanders fall happens, it's going to be bad. If he gets past those first couple of picks of the teams that need a quarterback, it's going to be the story of the draft. Is this going to be the Sanders pick? Is this going to be the Sanders pick?
Oh yeah. Oh, I can't wait. He's a game manager. This is what he is. So why are we picking game managers in the top 5? I've never understood this. I never understood this. And he doesn't have the mobility that like a Bo Nix did. So how he ends up getting drafted in the top 10 has never really made sense to me. I just think, teams need a quarterback. But I mean, now with so many different quarterbacks getting resuscitated around the league, I mean, we just talked about it. Well, we didn't just talk about it. We talked about it like 2 hours ago. At least an hour and a half ago. With Sam Darnold, so many reclamation projects out there. It's like, why are we doing this? We could just go get the next Baker Mayfield. We'll just go get Will Levis. That's what these teams are saying.
He's the answer to all team problems right now.
Yeah, why would we get Sanders? We can get Levis, a guy with some actual arm talent. That'd be better, right? Can imagine that. So Jaxson Dart, you think, is he your QB2? Oh. No?
No, do not like him at all.
Sanders or Dart?
I would take Dart because I would never take Sanders under any circumstances.
Okay, so Sanders is radioactive to you.
Yeah.
But if Sanders didn't have the Sanders circus, would you take him?
Yeah. I'd take him over Dart because I think
just in a vacuum, you think he's a better player.
I think Dart is a bust level quarterback talent.
Who's your best comp for Dart? You must have a great bust comp for him, right? Are we talking Josh Rosen?
I haven't run the comps on that to say. So Josh Rosen is fine. I think he has a terrible hitch in his throws. I don't think he can throw off
platform
type of throws. He doesn't have the arm for it. He lollygags the ball a bunch. I mean, and these quarterbacks can do fine in college and put up numbers. So there's not a numbers argument like, oh, this guy put up numbers. There's a lot of guys who put up numbers in college and then were disasters in the pros. I didn't see it in Dart previewing him ahead of the Senior Bowl. I didn't see him at the Senior Bowl. I didn't see anything that impressed me. And then watching him a little bit more when starting to scout defenses and wide receivers on his own team, getting different perspectives, I just always look back and go, I just don't get this Dart phenomena that happened.
I haven't noticed a Dart phenomenon necessarily, but his name is Dart. I think that when you think about good quarterbacks, what do? They throw darts. So he has a great football name, but even better, a great quarterback name. One of the great quarterback names of all time. But what you're saying is, really, his name should be Jackson Fart. Right?
That's better than I was going to say. It's a better name than Tyler Shug's shoulder shrug. That's whatever it is you want to say about Dart, whatever joke. I'm trying to think of something.
I said Jackson Fart, dude.
To revive this, yeah, we'll go with fart humor. Is going to work. Here.
So his name should be. I wonder if that would affect his draft capital. I wonder if his name was if his name. Let's not go all the way. Let's say it's a PH. Let's say his name was literally Jackson Phart.
TT.
Whatever. Phartt. If his name was Phartt, Jackson Fart, would he be drafted as high as a guy named Jaxson Dart? I love the idea of a Jaxson Dart with the headband and the eye black and just going out there and trying so hard and just being winner guy with that name. It all seems like a self-fulfilling prophecy where if a guy's out there named Jaxson Fart and he's not allowed to wear any eye black and no headband, I'm not as interested.
And you'll have the announcers having to say his last name over and over again every time he throws a pass, runs the ball. You'd sell a hell of a lot of jerseys. Maybe I'd draft Jaxson Fart just for the jersey sales.
I love it when you say it. I love it when you say Jaxson Fart. It's funny. So it is funny. One more time, just for the record. And we should also do Shedeur Sanders. Just an absolute bust implosion bomb. Wow, and you've been so right with these prospects for so many years. I just this is not good. This is not good. Okay, so on FastDraft, the Origins games, an all rookie game. Last year, the team that won drafted Jaden Daniels, and then it was running back. It was Braylon Allen. It was Bucky Irving. It was Tyrone Tracy. Right, Chris Jamino from Roto Grinders took it down. And if you wanted to follow the same model this year, I mean, Cam Ward is a strong pick. But do you think that in terms of just overall fantasy points, will Ashton Genty outscore Cam Ward in Superflex?
I would go there. I would take that bet. When I did FastDraft, the first rookie draft that I did in FastDraft, I think I might have randomly been at number 2. And if Cam Ward goes off the board, or as 3, so Ward off the board, Genty off the board, and then I'm thinking, you should take a quarterback for the scoring in this, like last year.
Right.
But then you look at this year, and I'm like, I am not taking any one of these quarterbacks because I don't think any of them are going to play. And even if they get in by injury, it's not going to be good. And it's not going to pay off, so I'd rather try to cash in and get lucky that one of these running backs will get into a situation where the starter gets hurt, and then all of a sudden, whatever running back now has to be the starting guy. Now Kaleb Johnson is the for sure starter. Now Judkins is the for sure starter. Now DJ Giddens is the for sure starter. I'd rather take that gamble than, well, Jaxson Fart got into the lineup. Now I'm going to get some fantasy numbers. I just don't think you are.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So yeah, you ended up going running back. Was it Hampton? Did you go Hampton? I'm assuming you went Hampton. Hampton?
I probably did. Yeah.
Yeah, you went Hampton. And the code is FFM for Fantasy Football Metrics. The code on FastDraft, FFM. A special today only. Use code FFM when you sign up. A $100 deposit match. That is RC Fischer's code on FastDraft. And yeah, I just I was looking at Cody Carpentier's Twitter X today. He posted his exposures, and lo and behold, who was his? Who do you think was his highest rostered, most owned running back on FastDraft's Origins tournament?
Boy, I don't have a clue. I'll say Judkins just as a guess. Oh no, Travion Henderson.
Well, it's going to be, so this is how it works with the ownership is, if it's a top 5 guy, it really depends on where you're drafting, if you're going to get access to that guy. So, yeah, for example, if you're drafting in the early first round, you're going to go Ward, you're going to go Genty, you're not going to be drafting one of those running backs. And then by the end of the first round, those guys are all gone. So when you think about how many drafts you would be doing, the ability to get up to like 50% of a particular player on your portfolio, because the portfolio section is right front and center on FastDraft, and so it's easy to see and share. So you're not going to be able to get, and I'll also give a spoiler that this guy happens to be ranked number 6 on Player Profiler in the Dynasty rankings. Happens to be ranked 6, and that's a guy you'd have access to in a lot of different scenarios in a draft room, and that's why Carpentier is up to 50% plus on this guy. It is RJ Harvey. What do you think, RJ Harvey?
That makes sense. Like everything about him, the numbers check out, his run style on tape, everything is good. I don't. And he's a better receiver than I thought. I didn't have any big expectations one way or the other, but when I put on the tape, I like to see that they're able to, if they can run some routes, not just take dump passes and screen passes, that they can actually run some routes, which he did at the Senior Bowl, and make some catches in traffic over the middle. I like everything about him. I don't have a negative to say. The only hesitation I ever get with like an RJ Harvey is like, yeah, I like him, but I like a whole bunch of other. There's so much food at this buffet that it's hard to get excited about. Just like, I'm going all in on RJ Harvey. Which is great. I like him, but I also like Ollie Gordon, and there's the case for Tootin, and there's DJ Giddens, and there's so many guys to talk about. This
So
class
many.
is crazy.
2 straight 1,400-yard seasons for RJ Harvey. And then the season before that, when he was age 21, because he's older, that was his leading reception year, 22 catches in that year, that first year with UCF. I like him a lot. And it also, his athleticism scores on Player Profiler. So go to Player Profiler, look for RJ Harvey. And you can see the all-time rank for his athleticism is 162 out of 750 plus. And so it's well in the green zone. But in this class, he's relatively average. That just illustrates the athleticism scoring, illustrates just how athletic this class is. Oh, it's incredible. So, okay, we love RJ Harvey. I also like DJ Giddens. Who do you have between
Really
those two
like
guys? You like Giddens better?
I like Giddens better. I like them both, different styles. So if there's a style choice to be made, but if I'm looking at it from a fantasy perspective outlook, I would lean Giddens just because he has more of the NFL's lead back kind of work style, where I'm afraid they'll try to pigeonhole Harvey into a for sure duo and make him, the change of pace passing game guy, where I think Giddens has a more straight line to being a lead back kind of back, but they're neither are going to be drafted by a team where we're going to say in a couple months, oh, that's their starting running back for the year. They're both going to go into some type of split or group and going to have to fight their way through it. So Harvey is as good a fighter in this case as Giddens is, just different styles. But I think I would just lean Giddens a little bit more just because of his lead back size and stylings.
92nd percentile 40 time at 212 with a 132.2 burst score, which is 95th percentile. I mean, and he's still not top 2 in athleticism scoring. And that doesn't even count Ashton Genty, because Ashton Genty didn't participate in the athleticism drills at the combine. This class, man, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. DJ Giddens would be a locked-in second-round pick in other classes. When you think of Zach Charbonnet, he's like better than Zach Charbonnet in every way, and Zach Charbonnet was like a middle of the second-round pick. This guy's a lot better than that. Now, how do you compare him to the other Kansas running back? He was at Kansas State. Devin Neal was at Kansas. Devin Neal kind of underwhelmed at the combine. We were hoping Devin Neal would put up numbers like Giddens, and he didn't. So how did that affect your process of evaluating a guy like Neal versus Giddens?
I was already down on Neal, and then I just closed the door on him with the combine. And in comparison to Giddens, to me, it's no comparison. DJ Giddens may be in this class his unique gift, his superpower. DJ Giddens is probably the smoothest, most instinctual running back in this class. There are guys that have more speed, more better balance, break tackles better. There are better receivers, and Giddens doesn't have any flaws in those areas. But the one thing that he has that I've seen of all the running backs that I've scouted so far is he just has a way when he's running the ball to evade the incoming tackler, to find the hole, to escape the tackle, not take the hit and roll off of it, just like quick feet, boom, he missed it. The defender whiffed the tackle. He didn't run agility or shuttle at the combine, and I'm interested to see what his numbers would be, but I don't even really care what they are because I could see it on tape. He just has he has the best knack to me for running the ball in the interior of anybody in this draft. That doesn't mean he's the best running back. As I say, he's got a gift that a lot of the other guys do not have. And I think that's why he can get to being a lead running back faster than some of the other guys that are back in the sleeper range.
Yeah, so the Big 10 and the Big 12 have sort of all merged together, and so it's kind of like I still think of these teams like Kansas as being Big 12 type teams. Missouri, it's hard for me to say, oh, Big
Yeah.
10. I still think of them like Big 12 teams. So, like, I think of them all in the same conference as, say, Oklahoma State, right? So that's Ollie Gordon. You saw him at the Senior Bowl. He also underwhelmed. So a handful of running backs didn't deliver at the combine the way we wanted. Devin Neal was one. Ollie Gordon was another. But you're still in on Gordon even if you're out on Neal. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll take a 4.6 if you're rocking, 220-pound level, if you're a more punisher running back. And so I was a little surprised, but not totally thrown by Gordon not running as fast. It was if he'd have ran a 4.58 or 4.57, I don't think anybody'd really be blanking. But his size, his speed for his size, when I watch him on tape, I would have never guessed that would have been his 40 time. But the extra X factor to me that makes me appreciate Gordon more in the mix of just big guy running backs, he has great hands. He has Rachaad White level hands in the passing game, and you get this big running back who can actually work almost like a wide receiver. That's very rare. Usually those big guy running backs, they're just big guy running backs.
Well, the comp is very clear in that case. He's Ramondre Stevenson. He's a better Ramondre Stevenson.
I could go with that.
Ramondre Stevenson has incredibly soft hands out of the backfield at like 240 pounds. So you see him, Ramondre Stevenson running the wheel route. It's scary stuff. So Ollie Gordon, similar thing. Again, another Big 12-ish, whatever conference they're in now. Oklahoma State, right? We're comparing Neal and we're comparing Giddens. Hell, we'll compare Gordon and we'll compare Stevenson.
And if Gordon was coming off his 2023 season and entering the draft, he'd have a whole different vibe. He's getting hurt to some degree by that down 2024. And when I watch the tape on Gordon 23 versus Gordon 24, I'm laying it at the feet of that Oklahoma State team. That team just fell apart. Defenses were geared up for sure after seeing a season of Ollie Gordon. So he got shut down pretty hard in 2024, but whatever his breakout year was, 23 for, I was just looking at the screen and Stevenson, and I got thrown for a second because I thought it was Ollie Gordon. Gordon has shown that he can produce at a high level. So I think his fall off was the offensive line. I think he's built differently with the gift of receiving, that he's just a different animal than any of the other big guy running backs of the last couple classes.
I
Like a
love
Braylon, there with a
big running
Braylon Allen.
backs with soft hands. Big running backs with soft hands. It's these guys. They
For fantasy,
almost
it's
never
especially
fail in the NFL. They don't, and Ollie Gordon could get the exact draft capital of Ramondre Stevenson to the exact number, the exact draft slot. 4th round, 15th pick. 15th pick in the 4th round. Who says no? Where do you want him to go? Where do you think Ollie Gordon would be? It'd be nice if we could kind of line him up in a particular team. Where would you like to see him go?
Well, I was hoping he would go to the Chargers. Not that he can't.
He certainly can.
But I think they may take a running back a little earlier than that.
They likely will.
Dallas has a feel for Oklahoma and Texas prospects. They tend to take guys closer to Arlington. I don't know if that's just because of their scouting Webb and Travel is more focused in their own backyards, but
They don't have a fourth round pick.
Maybe Dallas can get their hands on him and trade back up for him. Like, I don't know what Dallas is doing with their backfield. So I would love if Ollie Gordon if Dallas only drafted one running back, however they drafted him, and it was Ollie Gordon versus Javonte Williams versus Miles Sanders, I would be over the moon as an Ollie Gordon holder.
All right. This was a setup. RC. There's a team I wanted you to say, because this would really throw a wrench in the hype machine behind a particular running back. With the 118th pick overall in the middle of the 4th round, the Cincinnati Bengals select Ollie Gordon. Why not? Who says no? That's the exact profile they're looking for.
Yeah.
They're looking to upgrade on Zach Moss. That's what they want to do. And that's exactly what Ollie Gordon would do. And the problem is, Ollie Gordon, you could argue, is a better receiver out of the backfield than Chase Brown. Then Chase Brown is your explosive slasher. Essentially, that would make Chase Brown a change of pace back in that backfield.
It would completely crush Chase Brown, who I really like, but I'm living in fear of Ollie Gordon or whoever going there and blowing up that situation. It is not going to be Zach Moss. They've all but came out and have written off Zach Moss. So I'm hoping for my Chase Brown stock that Samaje Perine was the itch they wanted to scratch. But
listen to yourself.
I'm saying I hope that it is that.
No, there's no hope. There's no hope in Dynasty. There's no hoping in Dynasty. There's just, you are obligated to put Chase Brown on the block in Dynasty, knowing he is going into the draft with only downside ahead of him. You're obligated to see what you can get for Chase Brown right now. You absolutely are. Even players I like that broke out, they broke out primarily because they were just the guy that was there. And even though they're athletic, they're more athletic than the guy that was there, but they're going to be less athletic than the guy that their team ends up drafting this year. That's a guy like Tyrone Tracy. That's the problem with these guys. You can like Tyrone Tracy, and I do like Tyrone Tracy. In 2024, Tyrone Tracy was Tyrone Tracy, but he's not going to be Tyrone Tracy in 2025. The Tyrone Tracy of 2025 is not on the roster yet. And he's going to be more athletic than him. And he's going to be a hell of a lot more productive in college than he was. And sure as hell is not going to be anything close to Devin Singletary. So it's terrifying. If you have all these guys, it's absolutely terrifying. You hit, right? It was a hit. Bank the win and get out of it. Get out if you have these guys. Get out. The one guy that you could argue, like we talked about, is relatively safe because that backfield is so deep, is Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving's pretty safe. Of all the breakouts that we saw last year from exciting rookies, young players, Chase Brown in his second year, I'm not a Bucky Irving fan, but I'm not going to say he's not safe. He's absolutely safe. In fact, that backfield is one of the safest backfields out there. Rams pretty safe. Buccaneers pretty safe. There's a couple safe backfields. Most of them are very unsafe. But that is one of them. But most of these guys run and hide, RC. Run and hide. On both ends. It's a very polarized range of running backs that you need to be putting on the block. It's like Joe Mixon is at risk. Alvin Kamara is at risk.
Absolutely.
So there are some win now teams that you can approach with Kamara and with Mixon. And just any team, I'm sure, in your Dynasty League would like to have Tyrone Tracy, would love to have Chase Brown. Especially a win now team that's like, hey, wait, I can get great production and I can get younger at running back. Oh yeah, I'd love to trade for Chase Brown right now. Sure, yeah. What are we talking about here? Well, here's what I would like to have. Your Do you think a late first plus? Do you think that gets it done for Chase Brown, or do you think other dynasty managers are equally terrified?
There doesn't seem to be, from my perspective and talking with people and looking at deals, there doesn't seem to be the Chase Brown hysteria that I thought there was going to be
That's right.
coming off of every week that we move past his great last couple months of last season. It kind of dissipates like a Jackson fart in the wind and goes away. um, so if you could if you could if you could get that for Brown, if you want to avoid the potential stock downfall, it's like a stock that's at $100, and you're hoping it will be 110, 120 into the season. But if they draft Ollie Gordon or somebody else interested, it's going to 50. Like, you can't. Do you want that 10, 20% upside hope, or do you want to avoid the getting chopped in half scenario?
What do
So
you what do you think about the Giants? You think the Giants are going to go with like DJ Giddens, someone like that? That seems like a good candidate for the Giants. Basically, the fear there for Tyrone Tracy is they want to bring in a bigger back, and that guy's also super athletic and as good of a receiver as Tyrone Tracy. Then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what do we have here?
yeah,
Uh oh.
the big guy running back that I like, that scares me to where he lands is going to blow up a situation, because he's not going to be one of the two or three top taken running backs, is Kaleb Johnson. There's fear with Ollie Gordon, but I think there's real fear if some team goes into like the third round and makes a declarative statement on their backfield that they're taking Kaleb Johnson to be
Wait,
their
Caleb
power
Johnson's
back.
going to make it to the third round?
If he does, I
I don't
don't know
think he
that he's a
will.
lock for the second round.
I
He consensus is in the late second, but what if he falls to the third?
mean, Caleb Johnson historically would be a highly sought after player. 1,500 yards, 23 touchdowns, over 20 receptions in his final year. Coming out early, age 21, runs the 4.57, which is perfectly fine and reasonable for a big back. But just in the context of this class, it's like, oh, I wish he was faster. No, man, this guy is gonna be a machine. He is gonna be a machine.
I think he's the best interior runner. If you want a guy that's just going to take the handoff, run to the hole, and run people over, and have enough agility to avoid obvious tacklers, but will run into tacklers and take them 1 or 2 or 3 yards back, he's the quintessential Arthur Smith type of running back, where just get get the ball and pound it up the middle. Get your 3 yards, get your 4 yards, and we're just going to keep going to you and have you wear down the defense. So I think he's the best in the draft at that feature of all of this entire draft class.
Isn't he going to
If
Pittsburgh?
if that's the style that you want, uh, I would
The,
not be surprised
he has to go to
if
Pittsburgh, but they don't have their second round pick. So the issue is he is exactly what I think Pittsburgh wants. They're basically like, we're going to replace Najee Harris with a better Najee Harris. Right?
I,
Imagine Najee Harris, but better in every way. That's Caleb Johnson. We don't have our second round pick, so they're absolutely a candidate to trade up into the second round to get this guy.
who I think the Steelers' power back is going to be is Nick Chubb.
Ooh, smart.
I think they are absolutely the front runners to sign Chubb. The respect that Mike Tomlin has for Nick Chubb is insane. The respect that the league has for him, but especially the Steelers, who now need that role, don't have a second round pick, so they're not going to get one of these name power backs. You can get Chubb for a very basic contract. and he's played in that division long enough that all those teams, like, I'm worried the Bengals were going to make a run at him, but I think the Steelers is a more likely fit for him. And then there's your Steelers backfield with Jameis and Winston at quarterback. They can raid the Browns. That should work out well.
That's interesting. Jameis Winston on the Steelers, throwing it up. I mean, there's never been a better fit, right? Has there ever been a better fit? Has there ever been a better wide receiver quarterback fit than Winston to Pickens?
Levis to Pickens, but okay, I'll say Winston to Pickens.
Okay, we're setting the all-time record for mentions of Will Levis on a podcast. Like we came into this trying to go to Guinness Book of World Records. You've never heard a podcast with as many Will Levis references, and that's the thing. The audience sets the tone. Like the live chat, they wanted to talk Will Levis, and so we're getting all your Will Levis in here.
And it's not crazy. I think Will Levis is in play to be traded to the Steelers if Rodgers decides he's not playing there, which I don't think he's going to, and they burn their bridge with Russ. They're down to Winston and Levis is on the open market if the Titans are going to take Cam Ward and not trade out of the first round. I could see very much the style that Will Levis plays fits with Pickens and Metcalf, and he's a linebacker at quarterback, so he's the tough guy quarterback that's going to get the crowd going when he does his 7-yard run and mashes into somebody. So I don't think that's a crazy fit. I think Winston is very much in play there too, but I don't rule out that that's not where Levis is going to go when the Steelers have their back against the wall and don't have a quarterback.
That's true. That's true. Wow. This is so great for George Pickens, isn't it? I mean, there is a case to be made that DK Metcalf is finally going to find himself in the proper role. If you're going to say George Pickens is the X receiver, he is going to be the clasher on the outside. He's the one that's going to be going up against alpha corners. Don't worry, DK Metcalf. You don't need to do that. We're going to put you in motion. We're going to use your speed. We're going to have you running double moves and deep routes and bubble screens. You're going to have 3 routes you run, right? You got post corner, go, and bubble screen. And that's it. That's all. Just three routes. No longer do you have to worry about the over the shoulder. No longer do you have to worry about like your footwork on like a 12-yard out route. Don't worry about it. Never again. We'll never make you run that again. You're our flanker. Okay? You're an upgrade on Calvin Austin. You're an expensive, luxurious upgrade on Calvin Austin. Defenses will pay more attention to him. Alpha corners won't know who to cover. It'll be confusing. But George Pickens is like, I'm doing George Pickens, just like I always do. I'm George Pickens, and I do George Pickens, and George Pickens does George Pickens things, and here's George Pickens doing George Pickens. And DK Metcalf's like, actually, I like this new DK Metcalf that you're asking me to do because I never liked being DK Metcalf because I was not good at it. And I couldn't get separation, and I could not consistently get open, and my footwork was terrible, and all these things. It's like you can only run that fade so many times. So it just makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense that it doesn't suppress Pickens as much as you might think. Then if they can give them a YOLO thrower in the form of a Levis or a Winston, basically young Winston in Will Levis, then Pickens is a value. Then what you do is you wait for the ADP to shake out. It's going to be another week or so in best ball and on FastDraft, the Flex 4 game, where you let the Pickens ADP crater, and then you just move in and pick up the pieces. Trade for him in Dynasty. What a great trade target in Dynasty right now. Because, again, he's like Rachaad White. He has outs. The outs are that this DK Metcalf edition isn't the redundant asset that people think it is. that there's an upgrade at quarterback, and that it also paves the way, the contract paves the way for Pickens to hit the open market and find his way to a team that appreciates him more than the Steelers do.
The new quarterback, whoever it's going to be, not only gets
get your mic a little closer to your face.
Sorry, better.
Yeah.
Not only does the new quarterback, whoever it's going to be, get Pickens and Metcalf on the outside, but I don't know how you feel about Roman Wilson. Is like he's a forgotten soul on that team. I think Roman Wilson is really good. So you make him the slot with that trio of wide receivers? That's insane.
Bingo. You hit a bingo. See, that's what you would have to do, though. If you really wanted to say, if you were really going to go to the hottest of takes of all time and say that Marvin Harrison is not a top 10 receiver in this class, you'd be picking from players like Ricky Pearsall and Roman Wilson to put ahead of him. You can't do that. But you could build a case. You can't do that. But now you shouldn't do that. You can't do that. But there's a real case to be made for Ricky Pearsall this year. There's a real case that we just made for George Pickens. I mean, or do you think there's a case for Ricky Pearsall this year?
I like Pearsall, and the case is getting better and better. If they really move, and I think that they're going to, if they move Brandon Ayuk, I mean, the case gets blasted wide open.
So for all the reasons we talked about, you need to run and hide from players like Chase Brown and Tyrone Tracy. You need to be acquiring players like Ricky Pearsall because they have all the outs. They have the upside, the athleticism. They're in the right system. They're coming off a highly randomized lost season. It doesn't get any more random than I was mugged and shot in the ass. Right? I mean, does it get, I mean, that is the random outcome that would suppress your production from the previous year is, all right, well, I was rehabbing from this bullet hole in my ass. Right? So that's a thing. So pretty simple. Right? Pretty simple. And this is why you need to be in a lot of different dynasty leagues. You need to be in a lot of different dynasty leagues, and then actually in the Dynasty Deluxe package on Player Profiler, we have a Dynasty League sync where you can sync your sleeper and FFPC teams, and then you can see all the teams and the lifetime values and the position group values of all the teams in your leagues to make it easier to target for trades, and just be like, okay, today I'm going to go and I'm going to see if I can pick up some more Pearsall. Right? So in the offseason, that's what you do. That's how you play Dynasty in the offseason. You're like, today I'm going to look for opportunities to acquire Sean Tucker. Today I'm going to look for opportunities to get Ricky Pearsall. I'm going to see if I can cut my exposure to Chase Brown in half. These are some of the things you're going to do. No matter what you do, though, I just don't think you could move Marvin Harrison out of your top 10 receivers from the 2024 class. But we're trying. We've added Roman Wilson to the mix. We're going to keep trying for the rest of the show. We're going to keep seeing if we can make it happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Isn't that, you're up for that? Cam Scadaboo. Our Breakout Finder model really likes him. We're about to release the new breakout ratings on the Breakout Finder app very soon. The model likes him more than any other of the day 3 running back profiles. Where are you with? This is one of the running backs I've been dying to ask you about.
He's maybe the most perplexing running back that I've studied in this class.
Yep.
One moment I'm thinking, well, this is a top 3, top 4 running back in this group. Like, he's getting undervalued. Then I watch a little bit more, and I'm like, I'm not so sure he's cut out for NFL stardom. I am on the fence, and when I get on the fence with a player, I'm out unless it's a screaming value. If I can't make a case, if I can't get firmly behind a player, I'm not going out of my way to take them unless it, he falls to some radical depths, but he's not going to. He'll be rated pretty highly. I can't get my arms around him yet to say he deserves being a top 3 or 5 running back.
What about Marcus Yarns?
Wish they'd make him a wide receiver.
He's an incredible receiver.
Yeah, he's going to be a great receiver at running back. Maybe the fastest feet, like agility wise, like cut ability of any running back that I've seen in this class. That doesn't mean that he's a surefire success. There's other parts to the game to discuss, but his superpower is those feet are sensational. Like, should be a slot wide receiver type of good.
So is he a discount Brashard Smith?
Brashard Smith may be a better runner of the ball, but yeah, I think you could lump those guys into the same, put them in the same bucket.
But Brashard Smith could go, third round. People liked Brashard Smith, man.
Yeah, there is a lot more love for him than there is for Yarns, that's for sure. But I didn't see. But I thought Yarns accounted for himself well at the Senior Bowl, put his receiving skills on display, and started to get his draft momentum going. So,
think he'll be drafted?
Yeah, I think he'll be drafted. Probably 6th, 7th round.
Where do you think Tootin's going to go?
When you run that kind of speed at that size, I'm going to guess 4th round, but 3rd round isn't out of the equation. But there's so many good running backs. It's probably the answer to a lot of the questions on these guys is going to be 4th round, just because there's so many guys to pick from. There's some that are just going to have to naturally fall into the 4th round. So I would, if I had to bet, I'd say 4th round, but 3rd round wouldn't be out of the equation.
27 catches in his first year at Virginia Tech. What do you think of him as a receiver? I mean, he had 12% target share that year.
Yeah, he's a decent receiver. I worked on his scouting about a week ago, and everything's fine. He's not. There's nothing I can point to with him and say he's the best this, or you got to really look at this. But that's the right size running back with the speed that you put him in the right situation. He could be a Bucky Irving star. You put him in the wrong situation and he gets buried being Derrick Henry's 3rd down relief back for some screen passes for the next 2 years.
He could end up on Baltimore. You're right. They needed running back depth. Someone's going to end up on Baltimore and get buried.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That is right. So what about Martinez?
No, I do not like him at all.
What's wrong with Martinez? He's young, man. People like him.
he's young.
He runs hard.
Yeah, I guess he runs hard because he's so slow.
Ooh.
I haven't liked anything I've seen from him from Senior Bowl on through to the last couple weeks. I haven't done a full report out on him just because he's not jumping out of our initial numbers, and what I saw of him at the Senior Bowl and preview tape, just nothing jumped out at me like this is the next guy that's going to be a breakout star. He's not nothing. He will make an NFL roster. He's got the size.
Can't he be like 3rd round? I think he's going to be like a 3rd round pick like Tank Bigsby. He's going to be one of the reasons why they displace these guys into the 4th round. You're going to get great value in the 4th round because a guy like Martinez is going to go 3rd round. And we're going to be pulling our hair out.
Yeah, I mean, if that happens, I'll be surprised if he goes that high, just because he didn't. He came out of the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl gets, can really make or break a lot of players a round higher or a round later than where they were headed. And I think Martinez did not help himself at the Senior Bowl.
Are there any sleepers that we need to be aware of on this in the running back rankings?
The two guys, I mean, Giddens, but that's
Giddens is not a
he's
sleeper.
definitely a guy that's going to get drafted. I'm higher on Giddens than much higher than where he's ranked in the consensus. But the two guys who may go undrafted or drafted potentially way back of the line, Phil Maffa from Clemson has got my attention. I want to see what that pro day is all about. But 234 pounds and wears it like he's 215. I am impressed with what I've seen from him. I need to see more, see what that pro day tells us. And then I'm a big fan, even though it was a bit of a letdown at the combine. I am still a big fan of the guy from Rutgers, Monungai.
Oh yes, Monangai.
Yeah, I'm still down with him. That when I watched preview tape of all of the running backs within a couple day span, just one after another, trying to get a compare and contrast them. I'm watching Monungai and I'm thinking this looks like Ashton Genty. In fact, this looks like a more agile Ashton Genty, and I don't even know if he's going to get drafted. Um, Running a 4.6 at the combine didn't help, but size-wise, that 5'8", 211, I mean, that's a bowling ball, and he runs like a bowling ball. Um, I don't think his NFL torch is going to be snuffed out just because of the draft, whether he's late draft or undrafted. I think there's something with him.
Classic guy that's going to go undrafted or go late. He can go. This is a guy that could end up on any depth chart, pretty much any depth chart, even like the Rams. Like this is the guy that could replace Ronnie Rivers because the Rams, they have plenty of pass catching with with Williams and Corum. They just will get a bulldozer type. That's fine.
And I think coaches are going to love his style. They love those little bowling ball type runners that are all effort, but he has skills behind it. He had a really nice college career. So I was so taken aback watching him. Then I went back and watched Genty. Then I went back to watch Monungai because I'm like, I feel like I'm looking at similar players here.
Are you serious? I know you're not saying he's better than
No,
Genty.
I'm not saying that.
You don't have another running back that you could give as some kind of comp. Like I'm comparing these two. You went straight to Genty for Christ's sake. This is why.
Absolutely.
This is how you trigger people. You trigger people, RC. You're triggering them right now.
I'm here for the trigger.
You're pulling the trigger, dude. This is crazy. You're crazy. But I love it. I love it. Yes. Why not? Why can't this guy be the third running back on Detroit and get in there when when there's a knee sprain to David Montgomery? This would be the perfect guy to go to Detroit. The perfect guy.
Yeah, he wherever he goes, he's going to be one of those perfect number 3 running backs that he's just going to need. Like a lot of these guys are going to be entering as a number 3 running back. It's going to take an injury to get them launched, but that's how it usually goes with all of the guys drafted day 3 or undrafted. And then there's no turning back if he takes seizes the opportunity.
So we're talking 5 to 10 undrafted running backs could conceivably make rosters. That's that means all the Craig Reynolds, they're all vaporized. All those guys are gone. All the Ronnie Rivers, all the Craig Reynolds, they're all gone.
Yeah, you'd rather have Kalen Mullings if he goes undrafted. LaQuinn Allen's probably going to get drafted. Taj Brooks, Jaden Blue. I mean, these are all different styles of running backs, but they're all, Donovan Edwards, I'm not a huge fan, but he's better than some of the number 3 running backs that exist in the NFL today. Your Craig Reynolds example is a perfect example. It's like, there are some bad number 3 running backs out there, but no more. After this draft, it's all going to be teams have 2 number 1s, and some of them are going to have a number 1 as their number 3 running back. And it's only going to get worse into the future.
Yeah, even
with
a guy
more and
like
more talent flooding in.
Corey Kiner, right, from Cincinnati, his best comparable is Damian Harris. Like, he's not slow, and he's super thick, 5'9", 209. So he has like a 31.0 BMI. He's an interesting guy. You could absolutely see him taking someone's job, saying, "I'm sorry, Craig Reynolds, but I'm not sorry. You're done." Like, this is the type of guy that's going to do that across the league to all the RB3s and some RB2s. Ty Johnson, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Bye-bye.
And if they get stuffed, if some of these better undrafted guys or late round guys try to get stuffed on a practice squad, the second another team has that injury bug, they're going to go swoop in and yank them off his original team.
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. Any other running backs that you want to call out?
No, I think we might have hit them all.
Wide receiver. Okay, now we've already talked about the Iowa State receivers, or at least we will be talking about them in the outtakes. Depends on what version of the show people are listening to. I don't even know where we're at. We're so many hours in. I don't know where the show is. Before we move on from running back, I just want to know, you do think Judkins is over Henderson, right?
Yes.
Okay, I knew that.
I'm not huge on Judkins, but I'm not huge on Henderson either. So Judkins made me more of a believer, and I'm going to take another relook at him after that combine. I did not see that combine coming, but I think Henderson's fine, but I think he may be the most overrated running back of the top name running backs.
I think that's pretty safe and pretty easy to say. There's just not a lot of overrated running backs. So you could like him and he can still be overrated because they're all great. That is the thing. Now, the guy that seems pretty easy to identify at wide receiver as being overrated is Matthew Golden. Because Matthew Golden was not super productive, not at Texas. For me, it's the resume at Houston.
Yeah, Houston.
The Houston resume is a real conundrum for me because I'm like, I know scouts like this guy, but scouts always like the guy that's Santana Moss. And sometimes the Santana Moss isn't that productive at Miami because there's a lot of other weapons there. And then they go to the NFL and they get in the right role and it works. It all works. But like, for example, like his special teams production it is minuscule compared to like a Jaylin Noel, for example. So if you have Golden over Noel, you're doing it only on draft capital.
Yeah. I don't for a second understand this Matthew Golden rising to the number 1 rank among wide receivers for some of the analysts out there. I'm not talking fantasy. I'm talking for the NFL. I mean, I get that he ran fast, and I get that's what leads a lot of football analysts on TV around by the nose. But, man, you start digging into his career and looking at his time in Houston and even really his time at Texas until, like, he had a couple good games near the end of the year, and that was about it. He doesn't look like his speed. I would have never guessed he was a 4.2 runner. He doesn't play with that type of speed. When I watch the tape, I want nothing to do with the price of Golden. If he was a 7th round draft pick flyer guy, then fine. But as a 1st round talent, as a top, and for some people, the top fantasy wide receiver, dynasty rookie draft wide receiver, I don't see it at all.
No. And the top end of this draft class, like I said, is an easy fade to me. It's an easy fade. Tet, Golden, Burden, the burden in my hand. Just, I'm fading the whole top end of this draft. Igbuka doesn't have the ceiling. My interest in this class really starts with A.O. Maynor and Noel, and then it pretty much ends.
Well,
that's why. So I have this little window where I want those picks. I want those like early second round picks, or even mid second round, depending on the format. Maybe late second round, depending on the ADP and the format, where I could get an Aoman or I can get a Noel, and those are my shots on receiver this year. And I'm trying to limit my exposure to rookie receivers. What about McMillan? So McMillan goes and he runs pretty well at his pro day. Pretty nice. We adjusted it to a 4.53. He's best comparable to Drake London. He's a mega producer in college. Comes out after 2 straight 1,300-yard seasons. He's just a top target earner. 130 plus targets, 2 consecutive seasons. Even at 82 targets as a freshman. It's pretty cool. Pretty good player.
All right, let's change the course of this podcast. I would argue that Ted McMillan is the number 1 or number 2 best wide receiver I've ever scouted.
Okay, so I few, because I like him, and we have him ranked number 1 at Player Profiler in the rookie rankings, obviously. I wasn't prepared for you to say that. So you're talking about like better than Nabers?
No, Nabers would be the other guy that I would put up there saying arguably the best I've ever scouted.
Okay, so Nabers and McMillan are up here and everyone else is down here. Wait, RC, are you saying, let me get this straight. You're saying
this is one of the 10.
You like Ted McMillan even more than you like Lad McConkey?
Yeah, I would take McMillan for the NFL over McConkey, and I love Lad McConkey.
Wow. So do you agree with the Drake London comparison?
I think he is Drake London with Justin Jefferson's skill set and movement ability.
Oh, well, you know why we can't comp him to Jefferson? He's too big.
Yeah, well,
he can't be comped to Jefferson. So yeah, so just I gotta make sure we have you on record saying this. You're confident that Ted McMillan is going to end up with a better career in the NFL than Marvin Harrison Jr.
He's one of the 10 better in last year's draft.
Why do you believe Ted McMillan is one of the best receivers of all time to play in college?
Any area that you want to speak of for scouting a wide receiver, he's, for me, at the upper end of routes, size, range, hands. But I'll boil it down to last year and how I go around with scouting. It's rare when I put on tape of a player, like with Malik Nabers, and we talked about this really for the last 2 years at the end of one of the podcasts before they even came out. We were talking about Nabers being better than Marvin Harrison. There's something about when you put the tape of Nabers on, for me, for doing this all the time for 15 years, and as soon as I put on the tape with Nabers, like 3 or 4 or 5 plays in, you're like, this is, I know it when I see it. Like, this is incredible. I almost can't put it into words how good a player I'm looking at. So I got the same thing with Ted McMillan when I watched him this year. I think his hands are sensational. I think his movement skills are so underrated. Great route runner, has pull away speed after the catch. He showed it in college. I think he would have had an even better college career. He would have had more jaw-dropping numbers had he had a better legitimate quarterback to work with. But he went to Arizona with his grade school and high school buddy quarterback who's not very good, and you had this pristine route running size and movement monster, and you give him this ragtag half running weak-armed quarterback trying to throw it to him. It wasted McMillan's gift, and he still was great in college, with everybody knowing he was going to get the ball, with everybody knowing his quarterback best friend was going to throw him the ball. He was still great. I think there's no area of the game that McMillan is not an A grade in.
Wow. So even if Travis Hunter decided to play full-time wide receiver, you prefer McMillan?
I would take McMillan. There's no wide receiver in this draft I would take over McMillan. And I don't even know that there's anybody close I would put up there.
No, there isn't, especially because Hunter is probably going to play some cornerback.
And I like Hunter.
I know you like Hunter. We both like Hunter. Hunter's the second best receiver in this class. But can we think back to a previous class where there was such a disparity? Like in our lifetime value rating, we have McMillan 50% higher than the next receiver. Right? It's just like it's a clear first tier down to Igbuka. It's just there's the guy, the alpha that you want, the guy that you want to pay up for, and then there's guys you would draft like at ADP if maybe. Like that's what it is. Down to like Aome, Nora, and Noel, where those are actually guys I would target, and then it's like, it's very shallow in that way. And then I love how they're inserting Golden in there as this this shimmering golden fake out, right? It's just it's the Easter egg trick, right? So it's so perfect. Like golden, it's golden, like it's the golden snitch. And it's all the wrong, focusing on all the wrong details to take a guy like that. Now, I'm not as as negative on Golden as you are. Okay, I've surrounded myself with some real Golden fans. And so, guys I respect really like Golden. So I've seen some, and there are some good comps out there for Golden, like Santonio Holmes, like Santana Moss, guys that weren't major producers in college, but went to schools with a lot of professional receivers and then ended up, translating that speed into production in the NFL. It's not crazy to think that he's going to be fantasy relevant.
I don't disagree.
It's not crazy. It's not crazy at all.
There's raw talent there. It's not top 3 in this draft. It's not first round in this draft. I don't think it's second or third round, but it's something. There's something there to work with. But when I'm taking a wide receiver from an NFL standpoint, I want a technician. I want somebody who's got the athleticism, but is also a technician at the position, like Jaylin Noel is.
Right. Yeah. So
why take Golden when Jaylin Noel's right there?
Yeah, I don't want to fade any of these guys completely into oblivion. What about Burden?
I like him. I think he's good. I would say he's the quintessential B grade NFL wide receiver. I don't think we'll talk about him in A terms.
Do you have any inside information or any information at all? Any suspicions, guesses, speculations about what the hell happened last year?
That my take on that, going back and looking through it, is that quarterback, I know he had a nice combine, but his quarterback is not good. He had a run first, out of his element quarterback, like a almost like a skinny wide receiver trying to play quarterback, and their offense just didn't. Their passing game looked like garbage. When they got him the ball, a lot of the times it was on bubble screens and stuff because they couldn't make the throws downfield. So I think he was a bit of a victim of his circumstances, or he would have had more production. I don't think it's a Luther. I don't think it's a Burden problem.
So he was burdened by his quarterback.
He's burdened by his quarterback.
That's right. Yeah. Anyway, easy fade. All these guys after Tet McMillan to me are just easy fades because the running back class is so good, And most of those guys, and I flash it up on the screen, most of those guys are pretty underwhelming, right? I mean, Egbuka, like, are you
He's fine.
particularly
He's good.
impressed with Egbuka? You're like Burden, like he's fine, right? Exactly. We're not here. I'm not here to draft fine receivers when there's phenomenal running backs available. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But even though I'm not going to be drafting late round receivers this year in rookie drafts, there are some sleepers on the board here, right? Like, so do you like Trey Harris?
I love Trey Harris.
There we go. There we
I think
go.
he might be the second best wide receiver in the draft.
He's a professional wide receiver.
He is damn good. He's somebody when you put on the tape, you go, that guy is a ready-made number one NFL wide receiver. He's got such shockingly good tape. I didn't expect it. I liked him from the first time I saw him 2 years ago. Did a Devi preview on him, but then when I watched him again, with what he did with his 24 season, he is so good. He's so professional is the perfect word to put on it. So I don't know if he's going to reach the stars and Pro Bowls and all that, but he is damn good. He is a legit NFL starter and could be a legit NFL number one.
Yeah, he looks the part, man. He's over 200 pounds. That's all you need to be at this point to be an alpha in the league. 76% catch rate and over 100 yards per game last year in the SEC. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, that's when we talk about, is this wide receiver class better than last wide receiver class? Yes, Nabers, McConkey, Brian Thomas as the big three from last year are better than the big three of, for me, McMillan, Harris, and Noel, but not that far, not that crazy off the tracks. If you want to say that the big three are Tet and Abuka and Golden, then yeah, this wide receiver class sucks. But if you want to talk about Harris and Noel, then at the top, then I'm a little bit more interested in a competition.
How close is Ayumanor to the top three?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask about that. I do not like Ayumanor. I think he's the much lesser Michael Wilson that's just going to get flushed out of he belongs in the NFL.
I thought he's a better Michael Wilson. I thought he's like what we wanted Michael Wilson to be.
He's a legit NFLer, but he's got some problematic hands. His drop rate and just watching him on tape, the catches he didn't make that weren't considered drops, I walked away. I expected to be excited by what I saw. I walked away thinking, I don't know if this guy's going to make it.
So Cody Carpentier, we talked about, he published his highest rostered players in the Origins tournament, the all-rookie tournament on FastDraft, $10,000 prize pool. Code is FFM. FFM is RC's code. He gets credit when you use that code. You sign up with that code. You get up to a $100 deposit match today only, or if you're listening to the show at any point. Torrey Horton is actually the guy that he has the most of. It's not. I thought, RJ Harvey is number 2. Torrey Horton's number 1. He loves him.
And he is wise. I think Torrey Horton is a very savvy. He's one of those professional wide receivers that deserves a much higher rating than these Isaiah Bonds and Xavier Restrepo. Get out of here with those guys.
You don't like Restrepo? Restrepo's a slot receiver, right? Isn't he the next, Edelman?
No, he's the next. Who's that guy who's always bouncing back and forth from the Jets and the Dolphins?
Berrios.
It's Berrios.
He's Berrios.
It's the next Braxton Berrios.
He does. Yeah, that's most guys with that profile. They end up typically in the Berrios category, not in the Wes Welker category. Wes Welker was a time and place. The other thing is, had Wes Welker not been traded from the Dolphins to the Patriots, he could have been Braxton Berrios his whole career.
Yeah, and if Wes Welker then is in current day NFL with all of these talents coming in, he wouldn't be able to hang. Like if you're looking for a slot type of wide receiver, I'll take Jalen Royals. I'll take Jalen Noel. I, I,
So oh,
I'll
wait,
make
Jalen. So
Jack.
Jalen Royals is higher on your list too.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's really good.
Why do you like Jalen Royals so much?
I I, th- I've, I think he's going to be a potential bully slot wide receiver with low 4.4 speed and excellent production, really good hands, great athlete across the board. Lost some draft momentum because he only played half the season. He sprained his foot or did something non-serious with his foot, and then just cashed it in for the rest of the season to get ready for the Senior Bowl and the NFL draft. But before he left, his numbers were terrific. His season before 2023 was a really nice season. I think he had 15 touchdowns in 2023. And
Yes.
we're not talking
And then he
about,
played some special teams. I love that he added special teams to his repertoire last year.
but they used him as the everything because he was their everything. But I think he can be used in the NFL as a very thick, dangerous slot wide receiver, not like a short, squatty, or skinny type of slot, not a Restrepo type, but that Royals has maybe a little Amon-Ra St. Brown to him, potentially, to put him in a slot. So um, I would put him in my top 10 wide receivers for sure.
Horton or Royals?
Royals. But I like
Okay.
Horton.
What else do you like about Horton?
To me, Horton is just. I, I'm surprised he's getting. Oh, I am and I am not surprised he's getting overlooked so much. But the thing that I like about him the most is, there's a lot of these guys that are just so good. They're they're good enough athletes, but man, when you put on the tape, they really know how to play the wide receiver position. Where I'm not getting that with Matthew Golden, uh, but I am getting it with a Torrey Holton.
Yeah, but that's because he
Or
missed all those games last year. That's why.
yeah,
That's
and then
why he's
if you
getting
miss
overlooked. It's
games,
pretty
yeah,
obvious.
yeah, you get overlooked when that
Yeah,
happens
sophomore year, a
unfairly.
35% target share, 35% target share sophomore year. Holy shit. That's incredible. Even 700 yards or 650 yards as a freshman is impressive.
Yeah, his freshman numbers were really
Look at his
nice.
catch rate. How the hell do you catch 73% of the passes on 71 targets as a freshman? It's just very impressive. That was at Nevada, but I mean, he played on special teams all 3 years at Colorado State as well.
Just a talent, just another one of these guys. That's why I think this wide receiver class is underrated in how good it is, because it doesn't have that power at the top, but boy, does it have a lot of depth to it. Um, we're going to keep going down names. I see, we're working our way down the list. I'm ready to talk about some ones well beyond where Horton is and where Royals and all of them are at.
Well, so you're down in the Nick Nash zone? Is that where you are?
I like Nick Nash, but I think maybe the best wide receiver of that later group to be drafted, I'm pretty sure he'll be drafted. Ricky White from UNLV is terrific, and he can't get attention to save his life. But he's a guy that when I put on tape, I was thinking, oh, this must be one of the top 10 or so wide receivers in this draft. Nope. He's not even in the top 20 for a lot of people.
He did run a 4.6, so that's going to hurt him at 184. Anytime you're 184, you run a 4.6, that's tough. That's tough. But there aren't like no receivers that have done that before. There are receivers that were solid in the NFL, good producers. Mario Manningham is his best comp, Ricky White's best comp on Player Profiler. Fair, but yeah, the athleticism is not great. But I mean, 50% college dominator, my God. I mean, the production was insane. absolutely insane. 40% target share? What? What? So that's the beauty of dominator rating, is it puts his production in context. Yeah, was it as prolific as some other receivers? No, but in the context of a very limited UNLV offense, this guy was incredible.
And his movement skills and ability to get open, I just, it's cheap to say, and I hate when people say it sometimes, but he looks faster in real life. He looks faster on tape than he does. That 4.6 speed is a surprise.
So you like him. Who else?
Nick Nash is a great technician wide receiver. Bo Collins from LSU is a really underrated technical wide receiver. And Andrew Armstrong from Arkansas, I'm really impressed with him every time I put the tape on of him. I don't know that he had a great combine either. There's a lot of these guys that are technicians that are running with a 4.6 that I'm wondering if that 40 time isn't going to matter for these new wave of technician wide receivers coming in. He ran
Andrew
a 4.5.
Armstrong has a really cool haircut and a mustache, which I like a lot.
Yeah.
And he was athletic. He has a 90th percentile catch radius because he is 6'4" with 32-inch arms. So he's relatively athletic. Look at it. He is 7th out of 32 receivers in this class in athleticism score. So no, he is athletic. I like this guy. Very old. I mean, the problem is age at draft is predictive for receivers, and you don't love that. So he must have been a JUCO before he went to Arkansas.
Yeah.
So there's another guy, man. There's another guy. I can't draft him over a running back. I'm not going to.
For sure.
That's a mistake in a rookie draft or a dynasty rookie draft, or but you could see him. You could see him going. That's the interesting thing about this draft. You look at the teams that were in the top of the board last year in the Origins rookie draft on FastDraft. We're talking about teams with Brendan Rice in the 6th round. Like there was a lot of like people drafting tight ends in round 5 and 6 just because it was so barren. It was such a barren wasteland in round 5 and 6 of rookie drafts last year and in the Origins tournament drafts as well. This year it's very different. You've got a bunch of receivers and running backs that have sex appeal in round 5 and 6. And it's not just, hoping a guy gets drafted. And then even if he does, hoping he gets a few targets. No, there's some guys with this guy is Andrew Armstrong is legit upside.
You just gave me flashbacks to drafting in the Origins draft on FastDraft last year, getting to the last round and going, well, I guess Kate Stover it is again.
Yep, that's what people are doing. People are forced
that
to
ain't
do
going to happen this year. Yeah, it's going to be running backs all day long.
There was only one player that did anything from those later rounds. Can you guess who it was?
I mean, Kate Stover had a couple catches. That's not coming to mind.
I'll give you a hint. Denver Broncos.
Where people weren't taking Estime that far back. They were they taking Vele then?
Vele. He was the only one that was giving people any production. So last year was very. That's the thing. Last year very top heavy. Underreported aspect of last year's class, very top heavy. And by the way, if you're just coming to this show, you like what you see, like the show. Share it with your friends. If you want us to keep going, we're going to keep going. We are closing in on the 3-hour mark. I really need to use the restroom, and I'm not going to do it. We've got close to 5 minutes to go, and I am going to refuse. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to have RC Fischer talk about tight ends. Then we're going to have him give a bold prediction, and that should get us to the 3-hour mark. And then I am going to shut the show down, and I'm going to sprint to the restroom. But this is what we do. This is the sacrifice that RC and I, every year, we put this down. We put this show on wax for the people. And every year, when the people are voting, the people's choice, take of the year, show of the year, guest of the year. It's RC Fischer. So give me a tight end from this class that you like.
Besides the obvious, like Elijah Arroyo, as beyond Tyler Warren's probably a given at this point. I like Arroyo as the second best tight end, but just to shrink it down, the guy that I just happened to see tape on just yesterday that I hadn't really watched tape on before, didn't even really know he existed. When I put on the tape, I was like, oh my goodness, Joshua Simon from South Carolina.
Talk all about Joshua Simon and talk about multiple tight ends for everybody right now, because I am not going to be able to make it. Keep going.
Your catheter is full. We're talking tight ends. On the upside names, I like Arroyo better than where most people have them. You'll see Colston Loveland usually as the number 2. Harold Fannin at number 3. He's okay. I can see that being number 3. But the tight end that has fantasy appeal, that could hit the ground running quick and threaten Tyler Warren for being the best fantasy tight end from this draft, I think it's Elijah Arroyo. What he did at the Senior Bowl was turn my head around. I didn't realize he was that good until I saw him at the Senior Bowl. Then I watched all of his tape, and I'm like, yes, this may be the guy from this tight end class. But Tyler Warren is good as well. Check out some Joshua Simon tape if you want to see the tight end that has the best movement skills, that looks kind of like almost a wide receiver playing tight end, but he's really a tight end. He's not a wide receiver who was just pushed out the tight end. He's a legit tight end, but his movement skills, boy, you missed it all.
I'm sure I did.
But just wrapping it up on Joshua Simon, the movement skills from him, probably the best movement skills I've seen on a tight end from this class. Whether he's got the total package, I haven't fully delved into yet, but moving up my board fast and moving up my list of guys to fully scout, Josh Simon from South Carolina. And while you were gone, I said Arroyo, I think, can compete with Warren to be the best fantasy tight end from this tight end class, if we're talking in fantasy terms, that he can go up over the top of Loveland and Fannin, and it'll be Arroyo versus Warren at the top.
What do we think of his athleticism? Because we don't know yet. Yeah, Arroyo, he's gonna test at his pro day?
I would assume. All I know at this point is watch the preview of him, didn't get a great feeling one way or the other. Thought he was just Saw him at the Senior Bowl, and I thought he was probably the single best.
Is he even a senior? Isn't he a junior?
I think he's a junior.
So now they're just letting juniors go to the Senior Bowl?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. I didn't know. I just thought Senior Bowl means Senior Bowl.
Yeah. He was there, and he was dominant. He was the most dominant offensive player I saw of the receiver tight end group, that just always beating his coverage, had that alpha number 1 receiver mentality. He changed my impression of him fast. Then when I went to go scout him and looked at his tape, I'm glad that I took it from his first game to his last game, because as I'm watching Arroyo in the beginning part of the season, it was what I saw in the preview. I'm like, he's okay, but there's not this great guy here. But then mid-season on, he really started to take off. He really started to become Ward's option, and he started breaking away from coverage. I think he had a foot injury he was trying to work through or something like that supposedly held him back for the first part of the season. So if you look at Arroyo's total season, it might come up as but if you wait more of his late season work, when he looked totally healthy, then he rolls right into the Senior Bowl and dominates. I think the Arroyo from later in this 2024 season and at the Senior Bowl is the real Arroyo, and that's what's got me excited about him. I like Tyler Warren fine, but Arroyo to me, maybe for the price, if I'm looking for tight ends, maybe you get blocked out of Tyler Warren, who will probably get drafted into a good place to play right away. But Arroyo, to me, is the X factor of the one that could be the best for fantasy out of this whole group when it's all said and done.
What about athleticism? Who in this class is the sneaky athlete?
Arroyo's really surprised me, and I want to see more from Josh Simon. But those are the two. There's no, I haven't come across the Darren Waller or,
Right.
the eyes pop out of your head guy. I thought it might be Fannin, but I didn't really get that vibe off of Fannin from
But
his
he's not
work.
athletic. Unfortunately, he
He's good.
At the
He's a good
combine.
receiver, but didn't. He was at the Senior Bowl too, and I expected to see Fannin blow up and Arroyo to be some other guy, and it was Arroyo that dominated. Fannin was kind of quiet, and I think of the big names that are a bust, I think Mason Taylor is way overrated, one of the more overrated players in the draft, and overrated among the among the top tight ends.
We did it, RC. We did it. A total of 3 hours here that we've been talking. You're also going to have to use the restroom soon. What happened to me was I started talking about it.
Yep.
And as soon as you start talking about it, you're dead.
That'll get you every time.
It'll get you every time. That was my big mistake. I'll get you out of here, man. Bold prediction for this year. Give us a bold prediction for the NFL, for fantasy, something.
All right. Going to throw a bomb here.
Oh, God.
Potential wide receiver 1 scorer this year, Marvin Mims.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.